Okay.
Okay.
It's 10 o'clock.
Yes, it is. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to our participants from across Nigeria and across the world from Oye. My name is Harry Ulufunwa, and it is my honor to act as MC for this first webinar session organized by the Department of English and Literary Studies of FUOYE Federal University Oyeniyi, which is in Nigeria. In order not to waste time, let me just rush very quickly through our program and then hand it over to Professor Obola to deliver the welcome address. So we will start with a general introduction. Basically, briefly say what this webinar is all about, and we'll then go on to a welcome address by the Dean, Faculty of Arts of the Federal University of Ekiti, that's Professor Obola. We'll then move to the bio of the first presenter. And the first presenter is Professor Tunde Ope-Davies, and Dr. Victoria Mayowa Badigeshin will deliver the bio of the first presenter. We'll then have the presentation, which is corpus building and analysis using corpus tools. That will last for about 45 minutes. We will then have 15 minutes for a reaction. After that, we will deliver the bio of the second presenter. The second presenter is Professor Oyeniyi Okunoye. And the person delivering that bio is Dr. Adeniyi. We'll then move straight to the presentation, and it is on fellowships, grants, and other academic opportunities for the Nigerian academic. Like Professor Ope-Davies' presentation, that will last 45 minutes. 50 minutes will then be spent in reacting to that presentation. Item 5, introduction of the presenter and the delivery of the bio of the third presenter. The third presenter is Dr. James Yeku. I hope I got that right. And the person delivering the bio will be Mr. S.L. Larayeton. We will then go straight to the presentation, which is on literary digital humanities in Africa. That too will last for 45 minutes, and then we'll have about 50 minutes for responses and reactions. Item 6, there will be a vote of thanks by the facilitator, and this facilitator is the very hardworking Dr. Paul Onanuga. Then there will be closing remarks, which will be delivered by the HUD of the host department. That is Dr. Raifu Olariwaju Faride. He is the head of Department of English and Literary Studies in FUOYE. So that is it. I now hand over to the Honorable Professor B.T. Obola to deliver the welcome address. Thank you. Prof, sir, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Harry. I hope you are hearing me well.
Perfectly, sir.
First, let me congratulate the Department of English and Literary Studies for these ebullient and scholastic achievements. We look forward to more of this. I also want to thank the facilitator, Dr. Paul Onanuga, and Dr. Ari and others too, who have been working behind scene. My remarks. I'm delighted to welcome you on behalf of the Vice Chancellor of our great university, Professor Sunday Abayomi Fashina, to the webinar titled Digital Humanities and Writing Fellowship Grants Applications. This event being organized by Department of English and Literary Studies of the Federal University of Oyeniyi. The Faculty of Arts is one of the faculties established in this university since it was opened for academic activities in 2011. It has been at the forefront of innovative researches as well as lofty programs, which have contributed to high rating and feasibilities which our institutions presently enjoy as one of the just 10 years old university established. In fact, as at the 2021 this year, the Joint Admission and Matriculation Board rating in Nigeria, our university is the 5th most subscribed university in Nigeria. Our institution is also the 25th ranked university in Nigeria, according to webometric information. And our university is first among the new universities in the country. This rapid rise owing to excellent leadership, committed staff members, and diligent planning places a huge burden of responsibilities on us as academics, researchers, and tutors. It is why a program like this is very much welcome and germane in our life. As a linguist myself, I recognize the need to constantly keep abreast of current trends in humanities research, as well as the need to maintain a global outlook in my academic endeavors. It is why I find the topics which our illustrious and industrious great presenters are going to illuminate today very apposite. I am confident that we are all going to have enriching scholarly sessions, which I believe, in no doubt, will renew our commitment to quality research output. It will be my joy that the stimulating sessions today will lead to wholesome endeavors so that when we look back, we can attest to the significance of our participation today, having engendered positive results in our individual career. On behalf of the Vice Chancellor once again, and the university management, I wish us all a good time. You are welcome on board. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. We are very grateful for that inspiring speech. We shall now move straight to the introduction of the first presenter, Professor Tunde Ope-Davies, and that will be done by Dr. Victoria Gbadigeshi. Dr. Gbadigeshi, please, your presentation.
All right,
of
thanks.
the presenter.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, our speaker.
Dr. Gbadigeshi, unmute your, okay, fine, go ahead.
Okay, good morning, our speakers and participants from everywhere. I'm going to give a short biography of Professor Tunde Ope-Davies, also known as Opeibi. Tunde Ope-Davies, also known as Opeibi, is a full professor of English, digital discourse, digital cultures, and discourse studies at the University of Lagos, Nigeria, where he has been teaching and conducting research for more than 20 years. He has won a number of visiting fellowships and scholarships. The Commonwealth Professional Fellowship at the University of Westminster, London, the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, that's just Foster Fellowship for Experienced Researchers at Chemnitz University of Technology, Germany. that scholarship for University of Leipzig's Summer University in Digital Humanities, and a visiting research fellowship of the Institute of Advanced Studies in the Humanities, University of Edinburgh, United Kingdom. He is the convener of the Lagos Summer School in Digital Humanities, a training platform to raise and train young scholars in digital humanities. He's also the founder, center director, and principal investigator at the Center for Digital Humanities, University of Lagos, and the founding president of the Digital Humanities Association of Nigeria. Professor Ope-Davies has published more than 50 scientific articles and 4 books related to digital humanities and the use of technologies to analyze social media discourse, corpus-based discourse studies, and remote teaching and learning. His public service experience includes working as Senior Special Assistant to the Governor of Lagos State, Nigeria, where he headed the Directorate for Speech Duties in the Office of the Governor. He was also Senior Special Assistant in the Office of the Deputy Governor of Lagos State. He was a member of the Immediate Past Governing Council of Anchor University, Lagos, and he is presently a visiting professor and the Dean, Faculty of Humanities, Anchor University, Lagos. So on this note, I welcome Professor Ope-Davies to deliver his speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Victoria. I'm sure you can all hear me. Good morning, everybody. Yes, great to be here. Great to see all of you. Great to be part of this very commendable initiative by Paul. Let me, especially, I'm super excited because I found a lost brother, but found now. Harry Olufunwa. Harry, great to see you. Oh,
Prof,
wow.
Great to be seen. Thank you.
Super excited. People ask me often, where is Harry? Where is Harry?
You can always tell them that I've been kidnapped. It will be a tenable excuse.
Has somebody paid ransom for you now?
Not yet. My school is too poor, sir.
It's okay. I know you're usual self full of humor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Great to see you. Great to see you. Well, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so happy, so delighted to be here this morning. And I want to especially thank Paul again for inviting me to actually be part of this great program. Definitely, this is the way I feel we should be going as scholars in the humanities, to be providing the platform and the forum where we can engage, we can have conversation on how we can improve what we are doing in the humanities. Unfortunately, with the advent of these technologies, definitely we are doing a lot. Of course, I want to thank Yeku. Yeku has always been a very, very wonderful colleague, friend, brother, always interested in developing scholars in this part of the world. He's been part of our program at the University of Lagos. So Yeku, we thank you so much for always being there to support what we are doing in Nigeria. Thank you so much. And of course, for my colleague Ndife, thank you so much for also being part of this program. Now, I want to share my screen very quickly, and then we'll get on. Yeah, I want to find out whether we can see, can we all see my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Oh, great. So my screen is visible.
Yes,
all right.
I can.
So I'm going to, so I will be looking at corpus building and analysis, exploring digital tools and methods. Basically, I'll be taking this part, looking at 3 important sections in this presentation. Now, of course, we're all aware that we are already experiencing the 4th industrial revolution. Digital technologies are throwing up a lot of challenges and disruptions. But you find out that others are really taking advantage of this innovation and development to improve discipline, to improve different sectors of society. And we cannot afford to remain unconcerned. We cannot afford to fold our arms while others are making progress. And fortunately, we have scholars who have been looking at digital humanities, how technologies can help us to improve what we are doing in the humanities. And so that gave rise to digital humanities. The advent of technologies, deployment, development of these technologies, and how they can help us in our field. Now, of course, when people are developing application software, method and approaches that we can begin to deploy to improve language use, improve language documentation, language engineering, not only in linguistics, in literature and other areas of humanities. We can actually apply technology to different things we are doing. So let me just provide this definition very briefly. Digital humanities being described as the use of computer software packages and web-based technologies to investigate and analyze language and literary phenomena, as well as research in other areas of the humanities. It is now an academic field concerned with the application of computational tools and methods to explore, describe, analyze topics, epistemes, data and research issues in traditional humanities discipline and all these other areas. Now, this morning we are focusing more on corpus building and analysis, and therefore we'll try to provide some background on corpus linguistics. As you can see from the screen, you see corpus linguistics, how it's been described by different scholars, and then it says the study of language based on evidence from large collection. I want you to focus your attention on that. Large collections of computer readable text and aided by electronic tools. Excuse me. Okay, so basically, when we talk about corpus building now, we have moved away from manual kind of efforts. We are now deploying technologies to do what we are doing, to collect large data, construct repository, and then make them available to scholars that they can also, understand and see how things can be done quickly, objectively, and more validly. We can make statements concerning our data and our research. Okay, I move away from there. Now look at this. It says corpus linguistics concerned with meaning, with symbolic content. People are not just interested in grammatical construction. They want to know the meaning of what has been said. And see, when you have a large collection of data, it's difficult to actually provide this meaning, provide the information very quickly. But with the application of tools and digital technology now, you can achieve that within a very short time. What set corpus linguistics apart from cognitive linguistics is that it looks at language from a social, not a psychological perspective. Now, from the beginning of my career, I've always been concerned that how can we actually apply what we are doing to benefit society? It's not just looking at theories, it's not looking at approaches, but how can we, as scholars in the humanities, how can we benefit society? That's very important. So it can be written or spoken data. We can work on that. Although corpus linguistics started in the early 90s, digital tools have given it a new life and a new feeds, or a new set of feeds rather. Digital tools now enable researchers to handle large bodies of electronically processed language and discourse samples that can be as representative as possible. Please underline representative, because that is the focus in corpus linguistics or corpus analysis, that whatever you are doing, whatever analysis you are providing must represent the variety you are working on, okay? Sinclair 1991 described as a collection of naturally occurring language texts chosen to characterize a state of a variety of a language. Okay, you are trying to describe maybe political discourse, my area of specialization, and then you are trying to provide a large body of text, and you're trying to now find out some of the patterns of, conversation, features of language use in that part of large body of data. That is our major preoccupation in corpus linguistics. Now, let's now look at corpus. When we are talking about corpus, what are we talking about? It's been described as a principled collection of naturally occurring text, which are stored on a computer to permit investigation using special software. Okay, it's a principle one. You decide on what you want to do, and then you go out, you collect the data, store it on your computer, and then you now begin your job. Now, types of corpus or corpora. We have general corpora. You have examples there. British National Corpus. Of course, we also have Nigerian English corpus now that, unfortunately, we couldn't achieve that goal. I remember when I started my PhD in Unilag, I was to be part of that project, but unfortunately, things happen and then we couldn't do it. And now it's been done by University of Munster, Germany. It's a shame, but I believe that, and that's why most times, who happen to be one of my people in digital humanities, that we are trying to take charge of this, of our faith now. We are trying to see what we can do here. Okay, we don't want to cede our right to people over there. We can do it here. Okay, so we have general corporal, we have specialized corpora. You can see, I think I'll still provide the slide later. So specialized corpora contain text from a particular genre or register or a specific time or context. Specific time or context. Now we have comparable corpora. Okay, where you are comparing 2 or 3 corpora, you are trying to look at are there some patterns in this particular corpus, and then you can see the same pattern or features of language used in the other corpus, and then you cannot compare, and you can see whether you can trace the variety from a particular single source, or you are trying to compare. Maybe you are doing historical or diachronic analysis. You are trying to look at history of those features, and then see how they emerge from a particular source, and then how over the years they are now, having that variety. They can still display that. And now we also have parallel corpora. Okay, very close to comparable corpora. You have historical corpora, and you have monitor corpora. Now let me pause on this and then say a bit of this, because this is the kind of thing we are doing at the University of Lagos. A monitor corpus is one that is topped up with new text on a regular basis. Okay, at the University of Lagos, the Center for Digital Humanities, since 2015, we have been working on what we call the corpus of Nigeria New Media Discourse in English, okay, COMDI, in which we are trying to actually build a large repository of data of language use in different fields. But basically, we are looking at how language use mediated by technology, language on the internet, language on social media, and we are trying to collect them and build that corpus so that scholars and researchers can also have access to that. Not only that, the information that we are providing, the data we are providing, can benefit society, can benefit policymakers. For instance, you are looking at the political corpus. Okay, you can look at the development of democracy via language use over time. I can see how do people understand democracy, how they understand the concept. Okay, so these are things we are trying to achieve through what we are doing at the University of Lagos. Now, I go to the second part, the principle of corpus analysis. When we talk about how do we go about what we want to do, how do we investigate corpus, or how do we build our corpora? Okay, corpus investigation software allows the user to process and organize large amount of textual data relatively quickly with a degree of accuracy. That's technology. which we now with the deployment of digital technologies, we can do that relatively quickly with a degree of accuracy, and that would not have been possible if that had been done manually. Okay, Corpus software performs two basic functions: reorders items, and then achieves other things. You can do word lists, you can do concordances, you can do phraseology. Okay, so you can deploy the technology to map frequency of words, to map frequency of terms in order to arrive at generalization. Okay, so we want to do statistical significance that will make us aware of connection that we will have not to see if that was done manually. Okay, and then you can make specific claims concerning unique events of language phenomena by showing in which aspect this event differs from all other occurrences of the same type of phenomenon. That's the beauty of deploying technologies. Now, you are trying to build a corpus. Number one, size. Number two, balance. Number three, representativeness. Okay, you have to determine what size you want to build your corpus. Okay, but it is advisable that the bigger your corpus is, the better for you, because you'll be able to analyze that and come out with some varieties and then features that can actually speak to your objectives. Balance. You should be able to collect, the quantity that you can provide, balance in different aspects of what you are looking at. Okay. Now, for instance, you are looking at newspaper corpus, and then you want to compare that over a period of time. Okay, so you should collect. You are looking at news stories. You are looking at editorial. You are looking at features, and you are not just looking at only one newspaper. You are looking at maybe 4 newspapers. So to provide balance and see the pattern across those news stories, and then whatever you are looking at. Then representativeness, you are going to see that, of course, your corpus could be spoken or written. Okay, so in terms of spoken data, you have to look at how do you achieve balance. You must be able to look at sex of your respondents, the ethnic background, and other variables that can help you that can represent, that can show balance in what you are looking at. Now, representative. A corpus can be said to be representative if the findings from that corpus are generalizable. You can apply it to a particular language or aspect of language. Okay. Please note the process of building a corpus is a cyclical one. As you learn more, apply this knowledge to the whole corpus and be prepared to make changes, including leaving out data you have gathered. So you are not stuck. You are not hooked to a particular process. You can change. And that's the beauty of what technology can help you to achieve. Investigating too large general corpora rather than smaller specialized one implies having less control over the text in general, including in the analysis. On the other hand, due to the large number of available data, real linguistic patterns are also likely to emerge and may become the object of analysis, although they may not be representative of general patterns. So let's take note of all this in building a corpus. Now, I go to the last part, which is the practice of corpus building. Baker, 2006. Now, they are concerned more about quantitative and qualitative approaches in analysis. When we are looking at corpus building or corpus analysis, there are 2 major things you can, the important thing you need to focus on: how do you provide both quantitative and qualitative information on the data? Okay, and you can do that through concordancing, you can do that through lexical collocates and so on. Baker, 2006 says, a concordance is simply a list of particular set term in a corpus presented within the context they occur in, usually a few words to the left and right of the set term. I'm going to give us some examples. According to him, concordance analysis will be useful to identify linguistic patterns, and identify such patterns may help us to note discourses, particularly if the patterns are relatively common. Okay, and additional information on that. Usually the starting point in analyzing in the analysis was collecting sequences containing the combination of words that the researcher is interested in and exploring in both corpora. If you're looking at two corpora, one way of making sense of the discourse of something is to compare it to a discourse that is not. So you are comparing two. You want to find out why this is this, why that is that. Therefore, in order to compare the results in a more solid and reliable way, you collect not only structures containing the keywords, but also one containing similar items or contrastive pairs. Rather than looking for single words, you can use the Corpus query language, CQL, to retrieve off sentences containing the set of combination of words in which you are interested in, This may be described as keywords, key terms, lexical bundles, and so on. Okay. And then, okay, so building a corpus for a variety of national usage, you can do that. You can build. You want to look at national variety, regional variety. Many of the decisions made by corpus builder in the design stage are based on the proposed uses of the corpus and on the research questions that this entails. So very important, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, if you want to build a corpus, please draw up your questions. What are your objectives? What do you want to achieve through your corpus? And that will help you to now design your corpus and then be able to proceed on that. Corpus building is of necessity a marriage of perfection or pragmatism. Mark Henry, 2006. Although the corpus builder should always strive to build a perfectly representative corpus, issues such as corpus size, text diversity, number, and length are very, very important. Okay, then I've mentioned collocate. You can look at collocate, near collocate, and so on and so forth in your analysis. The analysis focus on collocate because recurrence is often considered a salient feature in discourse analysis. Okay. Let me take these. Frequency phrases and discourse patterns are vital to discourse communities, and those are things you are looking for if you are analyzing a corpus using the technology. And then you are looking at attitude, you are looking at values, you are looking at several other things you are trying to find out. In other words, considering the function of frequent and repeated words and phrases allows a researcher to gain insight into the discourse and culture of specific community. So, ladies and gentlemen, corpus can actually give information on the discourse pattern, the culture of the community, of the speakers, and so on and so forth, attitude, and other things you may need. Now, you have how do you these are things you can include and you can exclude in building your corpus. Okay, and then we have example of what you can use. You can use the Wordsmith, Congram, tool, and several others in building your corpus. You can also apply the theory. You can apply CBA in analyzing. You can apply SFT, that's a systemic functional theory, in analyzing. And you can apply pragmatics in analyzing your corpus. But of course, you must first of all do the quantitative analysis, and then before you begin to do the qualitative interpretation of your data. Okay. Baker also highlighted the strong connection between lexical collocates and the power of the message you convey. A collocation gives us the most salient and obvious lexical patterns surrounding the subject. For instance, if you are looking at the subject of one of the projects I have done, okay, you are looking at good governance in Nigeria, and then in my data, the data I've collected large data, okay, and I query the word good governance, okay, and the technology or the software will go through the data and then highlight and then focus on the key term, good governance, and then give them to me, and I'll be able to now look at it. Okay, good governance, how do people understand it? How do they interpret it? In what context do people use good governance? What do they mean by that? Okay, so these are beautiful things you can get through corpus analysis when you are using your software or application. Okay, so patterns surrounding the subject from which a number of discourse can be obtained. When two words frequently collocate, there is evidence that the discourses surrounding them are particularly powerful. The strength of collocation implies that these are two concepts which have been linked in the minds of people and have been used again and again. Okay, so it's very important we take note. A further step of the analysis was to observe a sample of concordance lines of some lexical collocates in more detail. Okay, I will give my own example very shortly. Okay, Clancy asserted that the starting point for the building of a corpus for a variety of language would be usefully based on a fundamental decision. Is the proposed corpus being built to represent a variety of a language, or is it represent a variety of languages such as legal English, literary discourse, and so on? So when you are doing that and your analysis, you come out with whatever feature you are trying to determine. Now, let me now look at some salient issues in corpus analysis. Number one, keyword in context. The software can generate some keywords or key terms queried by the researcher to illustrate meaning, to direct attention on special discourse features, frequency of quantitative analysis that aid easy interpretation. Keyword in context analysis provides a quick overview of the highlighted item and their implication within the context of usage. Okay, they reflect the pattern, they reflect the behavior, they reflect the thoughts and the nuances of meaning that that community can provide as you look at they have an overview of the discourse pattern and highlighting on the keyword. Keyword in context is the most common format for concordance line. The keyword in context feature allows you to search for a number of terms relevant to your analysis, and you view them in a tabular form, along with the words that appeared before and after the keyword. You also have lexical collocates, you have word clouds. Now, let me now look at some of the examples I presented before. Now, for many of you are familiar with things fall apart. Okay. Now, if you look at this slide, you will see this is Voyant Tools. That's one of the very reliable software in corpus analysis. Voyant Tools, and you can, I think it's free. The free aspect is limited anyway. So if you want to buy, if you want to have access to the totality of the application, then you need to pay. So Voyant Tools, you have, and you can use it to do this kind of analysis. Now you have the word cloud. You can come up with a list of words. You can come up with key items. You can come up with trends. If you look at this, you see the trends of the word that occur in this fall apart. If you come down here, you are looking at word counts. Okay. Now it says the corpus has one document. Now, okay, now how do we do this? You first of all transform your raw data into an electronic format. We call it TXT file because that's the only format that the machine can read. So it can read PDF, it cannot read MS Word, but TXT file, you transform your data into that, and then you now input input the data TXT file into the software, and then you query the software with whatever term or your objective. So if I query the term Okonkwo, for instance, in this fall apart, and then or keyword, you have this. So you have the document has 51,659 words. It has 4,666 unique word formats. Okay, and then you have some of these words occur. Said occurs 329 times, occurs 297 times, man 260 times, men 280 times, and then went 142 times. Now, what you can quickly do a quick analysis of these. Now, for instance, you see the word said. Therefore, you are going to see that novel is full of action. People are always saying something. Saying something. Okay, so from that you can analyze your data. Then number two, you see that Okonkwo comes out as the next most frequently used word in that text. That means that novel is the protagonist is Okonkwo. And then number three, you have the word man. Okay, of course, you know man, Okonkwo, they are related, they are collocates. Okay, and therefore you see man occurring, you see men also occurring. And here with among the top 10 or the top 5, you cannot find women there. So that tells you that that society, that community is male dominated. Okay, so it's a reflection of the Igbo culture, be male dominated. And therefore you see that reflected in the analysis here. And so there are other things you can also query depending on your objectives here. But here the word cloud, you see Okonkwo standing out, you see man and men, the same thing reflecting this, and then you see that happening. So your software can actually do a lot for you. Another software we use here, this is R, and then you see also R Studio is also a software that you can use to also do your analysis. You see here now also projecting the keywords that you have in that novel. Again, you see another software. This is called Tag Crowd. Tag Crowd can also create word cloud, can give you the visualization, can help you to quickly talk about this novel without necessarily, you may not even read the novel. If you're a corpus analyst and you don't have time to read the novel and you do this, you can interpret the meaning, you can interpret something from the novel. I guess my time is moving very fast. So a couple of minutes I'll be done. Now, again, another software. This is called. So what you do here, again, you turn your data into a TXT file, input it to this software, and then query it down here. I query here, search term Okonkwo, and then I click start, and then it generates. Look at chapter 1. Look at the text here, and then you see the highlights. You see the focus on Okonkwo here, and then you can see the context that Okonkwo occurs. Chapter 1. Okay, and you go on like that. You go on like that. You go on like that. Now, I want to come to the fourth or the fifth software now. This application. This application is called Sketch Engine. Now, the beauty of Sketch Engine is that Sketch Engine not only enables you to crawl the web and generate information about what you are looking for, the Sketch Engine can also help to build your corpus. From the beginning to the end, it can help to build your corpus, and then you save it online. Okay, so again, what I did here was to not just okay, apart from using the text, yeah, apart from using the text, here is the text. Then here now you have, okay, this online. I now went online to try and talk about the things fall apart, and then you have these statistics, this data, generated for me. Now here you have, look at this. Again, you see Okonkwo coming up here, and then number of frequency 1,498 within the corpus and the score. So you have this text provided for you. So you can do a lot through your analysis, and then you can begin to interpret what you have seen from the software as I've done here. And then, because I was looking for clash of cultures in that novel, and so I was able to come up with this using the software. We have internal conflict within Okonkwo, external conflict, communal conflicts. You see conflict civilization, conflict in the area of education, conflict in the area of politics, conflict in the area of economic, conflict in the area of religion and social culture, global and national conflict. You see that in that. Private and public culture, that's conflict of culture, foreign and local culture, modern Asian culture, tradition and modernity, change and tradition. These are things we can do. Again, I want to query goddess in the novel. I have this generated for me. I query the white man in the novel. I have this generated for me. And then you have all these, and then you can begin to interpret them. And then you can summarize your finding using the corpus. Okay, so we have clash between Western value and African traditional value, clash between the church and the gods or the goddess, men and black men, so to say, clash between foreigners and indigenous people, clash between monarchical system and on. So these are things that the data they actually provide for us. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think I will stop here so that if there are questions, we can quickly entertain that. Yes, please.
Thank you, Professor Ope-Davies. Ladies and gentlemen, questions, please. You have 15 minutes for this. Thank you.
Okay, I can see Damola Agbomola. Am I right?
You
Yes,
are.
Great. So please go ahead, please.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. And thank you very much for the presentation, sir. It was quite insightful and educating, sir. My question is this, sir. What's the difference between this corpus and stylistics? Because I think they are quite similar. So I would like to know the difference and what makes corpus, what makes corpus quite, outstanding from the field of stylistics.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very good question. Now, stylistics is just an approach. It's a theory that you can use in doing whatever you want to do, especially when it comes to literary, analyzing literary text and providing information on that. Now, what corpus analysis will do for you is to escalate your effort and then make it more objective, and assist you to achieve your aim or quickly and objectively. I want to find out whether are you aware of what you call stylometrics, because that is where you now have the application of technology to stylistics. So there's computational stylistics. So maybe you read further on that. So computational stylistics is something that now enables you to technology to do your stylistic analysis.
More effectively.
Yeah, more effective. Thank you very much. No, before now, people do stylistic analysis by just counting the number of words in the text, by just looking at the text, the print form, and then the count, or they do a analysis. But now, all you need to do is to collect that literary data, turn it to electronic format, input that into the software, and then begin to actually ask questions about what you want to achieve. Number two, corpus analysis, corpus construction is different because now you are building a large body of data. So you are not limited to just one text in literature. You are not limited to just two texts in literature. You can actually bring together maybe 10 texts, and then you turn them into electronic format. You input them into the technology, and then you can even now let me give you an example. For instance, now, even if you are not aware, 4 or 5 manuscripts, and you use this software, you'll be surprised that that software can guide you to the author of those manuscripts. Okay, so because it will go around the web, compare the writing online or from different sources, and then you will now identify the pattern of writing of that form, and now suggest to you that this manuscript might have been generated from this particular writer. And you'll be surprised that you can be 99% sure that that is correct. So corpus helps you to build, corpus construction or corpus linguistics helps to build a large body of data. Stylistics is just an approach, a narrow approach towards corpus analysis. So it's something you can use, a theory you can use, an approach you can use to do your corpus analysis. The corpus is bigger, stylistics is narrower. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
I can see for me, Olubode Shawe. Am I right?
Thank you very much, Prof. I'm Fumi Olubode Sawe from Futa.
Oh, Sawe. Sorry about that. Sawe. Okay.
area of interest is Yoruba terminology development.
Okay.
And working with Yoruba texts, we have Unicode challenges. So my question is, how can we get around this if we need to work with Yoruba corpora?
All right, thank you very much. That's a question that some of us in this field have been actually trying to answer. And what I'm sure that some I wouldn't know whether you know Tubosun at the University of Ibadan. Tubosun has been doing some work in that area for some time. We also have I think one scholar in Unilag, Professor Yusuf. These are scholars you can actually get in touch with because we need to develop technology that can actually answer questions in our local languages. Okay, so we are trying to look for experts in ICT, in computer science, in programming language that can begin to write programming language that can actually solve the problem you are trying to solve. So we need experts in ICT and computer science. You know, many of us, we don't have that background. We are just trying to learn some of these things, very recently. So we need experts in programming that can look at our local languages and then begin to write programming language, develop software that can actually solve and help us to work with Yoruba corpora and some of other local languages. So please get in touch with Tubosun. I think if I have this, I will let you have it. Professor Yusuf, yes, I can get you his number so that they can be of help to you. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, I'm actually in contact with Tubosun, and we have met at a number of
forums. Great.
Professor Yusuf,
okay.
I don't know too well, so I would appreciate being able to contact him. Thank you very much, sir.
No problem, that's fine. It will be a pleasure, please. Yes. Any other question? Okay, Dr. Lufwa, can you see any hand? I can't. Any other hand there?
Yes,
okay,
there's
yeah.
Dr.
Okay,
Fatusi.
Okay.
Dr. Fatusi has just...
Okay, Dr. Fatusi, okay.
Please.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Professor Ope-Davies. I'm very, very happy to be part of this arrangement this hour. First and foremost, let me appreciate the organizers as well as the speaker himself. The talk has been highly incisive and really upbuilding in this field. Gradually, we are getting to destination. Before now, we were just trying to do something, but we're now getting to a point where our linguistic, computer linguist now, who said language theories must be so made rigorous that they can be applied onto a mindless robot. That's Chomsky. We are getting there, and I'm so happy about that. But my contribution is not more of a question, rather, it is more of an observation. You just said that a corpus building and analysis is wider than stylistics. I'm sorry, I cannot see it that way. Rather, I would rather see corpus building and analysis as a tool for an effective stylistic analysis or discourse analysis. You want to do something, you employ corpus building or corpus analysis to show the world that what you are saying is objective. It's verifiable. We can see. Look at it. Look at the number of this. Look at it. That's the way I look at it. That's number one. So it becomes, rather than be a field in itself, it becomes a means to an end. It's a tool to achieve an end in stylistics, or a tool to achieve an end in discourse analysis. That's number one. Number two is not a question either. Is it possible to place a soft copy of your paper, on the platform for us? Maybe send it to institutions, various institutions that participate in this webinar, It's an appeal.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for your observation. Yeah, I agree with you, partly in the sense that, yes, studies have been there for years. Yeah, established, well-established, larger, so to say. Now, what I meant when I said corpus building is larger, what I meant is that you are talking about building something, building a repository, building a corpora, or building corpora rather, and then if you are talking about static analysis, because the question of the colleague was static analysis, or so to say. So you are talking about you are analyzing style in a literary text, okay, and then you are adopting, for example, you may be using pragmatics to do your static analysis. But for corpus analysis, you see a wider field. That you can apply statistics, you can apply SFT, you can apply CDA, and that's all you have the software. I agree with you here. It's a means to an end. It gives you the tools, it gives you the technology, but you put that within the larger scope of building the corpora. So that's what I meant by that. Building a corpora, you can build the corpus of literary text, you can build the corpus of political text, you can build the corpus of a particular language, or the variety of the language. That was what I actually meant by that. Number two, yes, I'm sure that Paul will be in touch with me, and then we'll clean up put the references, and then the soft copy will be definitely available. Thank you. I hope I've answered your question.
You have. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let me
Yeah,
call,
please, I have a question.
I
Yeah,
can see
please,
Sumbo, I can see Richard, I can see Victoria. Okay, let me.
Yeah.
Okay, is that Sumbo?
Yes, please. Good
please, yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, please
good morning, everyone. Yes.
Good morning. Yes, please.
Dr. Opeibi, Professor Opeibi, good morning. You were my supervisor when I did my master's in Unilag. Thank you so much. I'm doing the research. Yeah, thank you, sir. I'm doing the research on corpus linguistics, on the language change anyway, language change at the level of the synchronic, language change at the synchronic level. My question now is, because I got to my chapter 4 where I need to analyze my data, and I got stuck somehow. So I really thank God for this webinar. It is really insightful, it is apt, and I want to appreciate the organizers. Number one, I want to ask this question: which of the tools, like the software I was trying to use was the Antcock, but I realized that somehow I couldn't just proceed. So I want to ask for your opinion in analyzing language change at the synchronic level. Which of the software do you advise I use? Then you were talking about types of corpus. We have the history, comparable, parallel, historical, and monitor corpora. So I just want your comment on this, because I really need to move on. I got stuck somehow in the area of analysis, probably because I don't really have too much insight into what corpus linguistic is. Yes. So just to add to it, I would appreciate it if we can get this the PowerPoint presentation, if you can be sent to our email. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Professor Opeibi.
Good to see you again. Thank you so much. Now, I wonder whether you have tried Sketch Engine.
Not at all, sir.
No, Sketch Engine is more robust. Very, although it's paid, you have to pay for it, so it's not free.
Okay.
the free version is just for 7 days or for 1 week. So you try Sketch Engine. If you still have any problem, then let me know, and so that we can talk. I mean, since you know me very well, so we can talk off camera. So no problem. I'm always available to help. Please. Yeah.
It's okay.
Let's have Richard, please. Let's have Richard Ako.
Good morning, Prof. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was really educative. My question is basically on data gathering from the presentation made, I realized that some of the softwares that were mentioned were used or are used purposely for analyzing data. So I don't know, in digital humanities, are there provisions for softwares that help in sourcing data in any way? Or some of these softwares that we have talked about, do they in any way help in also sourcing data? That's just my question. Let me just.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, valid question, good. Now, number one, it depends on the type of data you are looking for. It depends on your research area. So if you, for instance, now, if you are looking for data, additional data, I'm currently working on online political conversation between 2015 and 2019, sponsored by TED Fund. So you want to collect that type of data, okay? Sketch engine is beautiful. It can help you to do that. Now, because, and there are several other applications that you can just program, and then if you query that software, and then you provide the key term. For instance, you are looking for, let's say, Christian sermons in Nigeria or Muslim sermons in Nigeria. Just query that term, Muslim sermons in Nigeria, and you query it, and then into the software, and then you input the software, and then you ask the software to go online. So the software will do global web crawling, okay? And then we generate the data for you. Now, the difference between normal Google search and using software is that Google search will just give you sources where you're going to get the data. We highlight them for you. So you see how to go back and be looking for them individually. But now for the application, some of them, if you query the application with the key terms or the keywords, that application will go around the web, generate the data for you, organize the data for you. That will make it easy for you to now see, okay, which one is relevant, which one is not relevant, and some of them will provide the sources. So if you want to now, look for additional details, you can click the link and then take you to the original source of that data. So, and that's why I would recommend Sketch Engine for all our scholars. You want to do something that is quite good, you need to get Sketch Engine, and it's very easy to learn. You have the tutorial online, so you can, but you have to, as I said, you have to pay for Sketch Engine if you want to really have access to all the functionalities of the software. So I would recommend Sketch Engine also for you to be able to do your gather your data. But of course, you understand that you need some data. You may need to collect some data yourself. For instance, if you are working on literary text, Soyinka, you're working on Soyinka, you're working on the Ashibe's text, or you're working on Olufunwa's writings, poems or whatever it is. So you can collect all his papers, all his writing, turn them into a TXT file, and then Anquan can help you to organize that. So those are two things you can do. You can collect hard copies of those material, turn them to soft copies, put them in the software, or you can use the software to do a web crawling and generate data for you. I think with that, you should be able to get a handle on your projects. Are you okay, please?
Thank you very much, Prof. I'm very much okay. Thank you.
My pleasure. Well, let's have Victoria now. Victoria.
Thank you, Prof. The lecture was quite insightful. Thank you very much. I'm aware that Corpus linguistics will work very well for electronic data. I'm just wondering, if you have written text, is there any provision anywhere that can help one to convert such to electronic data first before converting to the TXT file that can now be loaded to many of the softwares. I'm just wondering, there are texts that are they are already produced, they are print, and you may want to work on them. Is there anything one can do to then generate a corpora?
Okay, thank you very much. Now, some of those texts, for instance, a number of archive-based texts are already in electronic format now. Yeah, TFA, I think which other one now? A man of the no, not a number of them. But what you can also do, if you go online, you can also search, and there's some of these literary texts are already in electronic format. But if you don't have that, it will take some time. You have to you get across to the publishers, get their permission. They have soft copy of that. The publishers can actually give you the soft copy. Now, it's very easy to turn your MS Word, your PDF into TXT file. If you look at, if you are trying to save your document, if you click the one after your visit, that's a window under your system. When the window comes out for your saving, there's another one under. You click it, you have drop down links or drop down box that will now give you different format of text, asking you, do you want to save it as PDF, want to save it as a TXT file? And so there's the TXT file there, TXT. So if you click the TXT, even though your original document is in Word format or PDF, and you say save as TXT down there, it will turn your this into TXT file. So that makes it easy for you. So it's not very difficult. Victoria, I hope you're okay. Victoria,
Yes, sir.
okay?
Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Benga Joseph.
Sorry, Prof. Okay, Benga Joseph, very quickly, Prof, a very brief response so that we can move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay, Benga Joseph, very quickly, please.
Thank you very much. I am a participant from South Africa. Mine is to just express my word of appreciation to the organizer of this program and to our prof for doing a good job. I'm particularly impressed on account of the fact that for some times now I've been struggling in trying to understand the concept of Corpus linguistics. I've tried to read a number of articles, books along that line, and I've been struggling with it. But with this presentation, oh, I'm so excited. I now understand what it is about and how one can engage in it as a linguistic practice. So I'm so grateful. I'm so happy to be part of this meeting. Prof, you've done a good job. The organizer, my colleague, Dr. Paul Onanuga, I so much commend your effort in this regard. And of course, my area of specialization is stylistics. And there's some questions that have been asked in terms of the nexus between corpus linguistics and stylistics practice. I find it so relevant to me, and I think I can begin to develop interest in researching into this area. So I'm so grateful. I'm so excited to be part of this meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Benga Joseph. And we would like to thank Professor Ope-Davies for his brilliant presentation, as well as the comprehensiveness of the reactions and responses. We shall now go to Dr. Oyeniyi, who will introduce, not at all, sir, who will introduce and give us a brief bio of our next guest presenter, who is Professor Oyeniyi of the Obafemi Awolowo University. Dr. Oyeniyi. Dr. Oyeniyi, your presentation, sir.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me, everyone?
We can, thank you.
Oh, thank you for that. My job is simple. It's just to read a bio of Professor Oyeniyi Okunoye. First, that Professor Oyeniyi Okunoye is a professor of English at Obafemi Awolowo University in Ife, Osun State, Nigeria, where he teaches and researches African literature. He is interested in traditions of poetry, the Black word, and theorizing African literary practices. It's published in many reputable journals and reviews for many leading journals in his field. Among the journals in which he has published research in African literatures, history in Africa, Matatu, English
Please,
studies.
sir, increase the volume. Please, sir, increase the volume.
Teach script, Obsidian, Commonwealth, essays and studies, English literatures, new literatures review, journals of Commonwealth literatures, Africa Journal of the International African Institute, Safri and Commonwealth essays and studies. Professor Okunoye has been a visiting researcher at universities in Cape Town, Birmingham, Cambridge, and Beirut, and has benefited from numerous research grants and awards, some of which came from the Humboldt Foundation, the British Academy, Austria, Harry Oppenheimer Foundation, and the University of Cambridge. He's one of the editors of Okunoye Text, an international journal of international studies, and the editor of Nigerian Journal of Oral Literatures. He has been actively involved in mentoring early career scholars in Africa under the African Humanities program. He has served and as the head of the Department of English, and is currently the Dean of Arts at Obafemi University in Ife. Professor Okunoye is currently researching traditions of activist poetry in Africa, performance poetry in West Africa, and the performance of identities in African rhetorical anthems. Okay, thank you. Over to Professor Oyeniyi Okunoye. Dr. I'm done here.
Thank you. Professor Oyeniyi Okunoye, you have the floor, sir. Thank you. Hello, Prof. Sir. Check whether you have unmuted. I'm not sure we can hear you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm sorry for that itch. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
we
we
can,
can.
sir. I believe most
Okay.
of us can.
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to start by thanking the Federal University of Yeku for creating this platform for us to interact. And I'm particularly grateful to the Department of English and Literary Studies that is obviously becoming a pace setter. You only need to see the journal that the department sponsors to know exactly what I mean. And I am also grateful to Dr. Nonuga, who has been actively involved in putting this together. I must say that being a former student, we're really proud of what he's doing. And well, the kind of profile that people like him are developing will testify to the possibility of doing serious research in our environment. Now, my presentation this morning is entitled Academic Grants, Awards, and Fellowships. I know that the expectation of the organizers is that I draw attention to opportunities for grants, awards, and fellowships for scholars in Nigeria. Now, in the presentation, I would be doing three things in the main. The first is to draw attention to the need for us as scholars to be interested in sourcing funding and facilities for research. And I'm going to do that because I know that the kind of orientation that many of us were given will make us to feel that all that you do in the university is teach. And the irony is that even though most of the time we are not equipped for even the teaching and research, at the end of the day, the university will always ask you to present your research output, and your career advancement naturally depends on that. The second thing I'll be doing is to broadly survey funding opportunities that are available to scholars in diverse fields. And I'm doing this because I recognize the fact that, so many of the things I will be talking about here will apply to people in other fields as well. And I think it would not be sufficient to just survey opportunities without inspiring members of this, of the audience to aspire to identify opportunities that are relevant to whatever they are doing and then to apply for them. Now, let me start by just making a few statements about academic funding. Now, you see, when we talk about research grants, fellowships, and awards in the Nigerian environment now, it may sound strange. But you see, I recall that my father had an invitation from his university, the University of Ibadan, to come and do graduate studies with funding. Now, a lot of the things that we don't talk about now were things that people took for granted in the past. Graduate schools were not just clearing houses for forms, they were also supporting promising scholars. And a lot of people conducted their research with grants from their institutions. It's unfortunate that we have witnessed what you can call the flowering of universities without corresponding acknowledgement of the primacy of research to the mandate of the university. And so now in Nigeria, a lot of people are used to taking loans from cooperative societies to attend conferences, to do their research, and so on. I'm sure that none of us will find what I'm saying strange. So now, but I think it's important for us to recognize that university lecturers, researchers the world over, do not necessarily have to spend their own money or save part of their own earnings to fund their research. So Now, facts about academic funding. It's an investment in promising and competent scholars. And I think I'm deliberately highlighting promising and competent in this case, because after looking at a lot of announcements, what has become obvious to me is that those who are funding researchers at various levels would always hint at the fact that these grants, fellowships, and awards are not just for anybody. They are for those who are promising and those who are going to be leaders in their fields. People are competent. In other words, they are leaders. Number two thing that I want to draw attention to is that these various forms of funding facilitate the production of knowledge. And it will be very strange for a country to be aspiring to development, advancement, and leadership in the world without investing in the production of knowledge. Now, it's not difficult to understand why countries like America, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, and others are producing a lot that the rest of the world will consume. These things don't just happen. I mean, looking at what we have experienced with the COVID pandemic, we will see that so many countries were just waiting for those that would naturally respond to those challenges to produce the vaccines and then for them to buy. That reveals a lot about the values of a people. And then these funding sources also, I mean, that when you get academic funding, it's always proof of academic recognition and accomplishment. And this is the way I like to put it. Grants, fellowships, and awards are to scholars what medals are to soldiers or military officers. They are proofs of accomplishment. And then they also promote and facilitate international mobility. Now, when you get grants, it's always easier for you to move around to do research. And I want to say that very many of us have had the opportunity to go outside of our country to do research just because we got these awards. Now, I want to just briefly talk about what it takes to win a grant, a fellowship, or an award. Maybe I should quickly even talk about these three. When you get an award, you may have to decide what you do with it. When you have a fellowship, in very many cases, you may have some liberty with regard to what you do with the work, but in certain cases, you are expected to come into residence. I have had, for instance, an opportunity to work with some other people. There are fellowships like the one that is administered by the Center of African Studies at the University of Cambridge. Each year, they bring a number of African scholars together, and then they will be together for a period, conduct research, I think most of the time for a period of 6 months. And then the expectation is that within the period of residency, you make a presentation and you do an article. Now, I want to stress this because I think we also need to underscore the fact that there are certain things that matter globally that we don't value here. Now, when people talk about scholarship in Nigeria, and I'm sorry to say, I've spent most of my career in Nigeria. I trained in Nigeria and I've worked here for close to 30 years within the Nigerian university system, even though I've also had opportunities to conduct research abroad. One of the things I learned working in universities outside of Nigeria is the fact that emphasis is not always on the amount of papers, the number of things you have written, the emphasis in most cases is on the quality of your outputs and the impact of your research. For instance, if you are on that Cambridge Fellowship, the expectation is that you do just one article within 6 months. I recall that the first time I was going to the United Kingdom and I was going to work with a prominent researcher, I proposed to do a monograph, and guess what? I had just 4 months to spend there. In assessing applications for fellowships and grants, and I think I need to quickly add that in addition to the fact that I've enjoyed a lot of fellowships, grants, and awards, and a lot of travel grants, I've also been involved in assessing people for some of these awards, and I've been involved in administering some of the interventions of TED Fund in my university. I'm a member of one of the committees, so I'm very, very passionate about these matters, and I've also been actively involved in mentoring, as was stated earlier on. And this has given me the opportunity to interact with scholars in various parts of Africa, because I've organized workshops that have been funded by the American Council of Learned Societies. Now, there are certain things that matter, and I want to say that I want to just highlight some of these because the demands of various fellowships and awards are different. Now, I was talking about awards. There are awards that you are just nominated for, and you won't just make an application, and there are grants and all that. There are some of these fellowships that you win, and then you benefit from them for the rest of your career. We'll come to that very soon. But let me quickly mention a few things that those who are interested in applying for fellowships, grants, and awards anywhere should be mindful of. Now, in the application, the element of innovativeness is always constant. What is your work? What is the proposed research going to add to knowledge? Of course, you cannot say anything reasonable in this regard if you are not conscious of the state of knowledge in the area of research that is concerned. So now, what are you going to add to knowledge? Now, of course, that involves an awareness of existing body of knowledge, and then that also suggests that you would be in a position to critique what has been done, and then draw attention to what is yet to be done, and then underscore the elements of innovation that is in your proposed research. Now, two, increasingly, there's now emphasis on or interest in researches that cross boundaries. And by this, I mean, in many cases, I know, for instance, that if you are going to apply for the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, the NRF of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, which is a major grant awarding body in Nigeria, when you are collaborating, you are likely to get, more funding. Now, the third one is social responsiveness. Let me say that in the humanities, very many times we say, okay, yeah, it's not in every case that research should solve problems. But I must say that even the African Humanities Program that has been focusing on knowledge for the sake of knowledge is likely to also respond to this particular need, because in most cases, even when you are getting a grant for a body that is also going to give fellowships and awards, the interest of the organization that is going to fund the project will matter. And I think that, even that project is likely to go in this direction, especially as we are going to experience a transition from AHP to AHA. So now you can think about a lot of interventions that are, for instance, most of the awards and grants from TED Fund are interested in whether you're going to solve problems or not. And then global needs. I know that there have been all kinds of announcements in the past 1 year that are targeted at solving the problems created by COVID. And if you are researching, if you are working on anything that has to do with solving the COVID problem, I'm sure you won't have to it won't take you time to identify those that are interested in that. Then the fifth point I want to make has to do, I want to draw attention to, has to do with the quality of your work. And now that's very, very important. I can say that some of the most prestigious fellowships that I am familiar with would be interested in the quality of your work, whether you are talking about fellowships administered by the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, or those that are administered by the British Academy and some others. And what is normally done is that, look, experts, people that are specialists in your field, will be called upon to assess your work, look at the quality of your work, so as to predict, what you are likely to do. And this will give them some either assurance as to your capacity to accomplish what you have. Award grants and fellowships are always interested in what you have, the opportunities that you have enjoyed. If you want some other prestigious fellowships, you probably will stand a better chance of winning more because they will then know that they are investing in a leader, because every grant, everybody that awards grants and fellowships is interested in investing in those who will become leaders. And then, of course, there are needs. When there are needs and all that, they would respond to this. Now, I've had to emphasize that because I think this is very, very important. So this, in a way, will answer the question as to what are the things that will matter if we are aspiring to apply for grants. You have to be interested in the quality of the work that you do. You need to aspire to be a, now, hello, can you hear me, please?
Yes, yes. The voice is off now.
Yeah, apologies. I'm sure Prof will connect back now. I guess it's the network. Yeah, so Prof is going to join us back now. He's going to be on right away.
Okay.
So while Prof makes attempts to join us, let me just apologize for people who asked questions earlier in the chat. Professor Opeibi had to leave. He was at another event, so he's had to be off. But at least subsequently, people who ask questions in the chat will ensure that the presenters respond to their questions and observations. Thank you.
Dr. Olunga, it's like you promised via a text message that those papers or these papers that have been presented today will be made available to participants. Is that true?
Yes, once I get the soft copies from all of the presenters, I'll definitely avail our participants copies of this.
Yes, sincerely hope you will get them.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry, I was away briefly. I had to switch on the generator. Hello? Hello, hello, hello?
So how many papers are we expecting?
We can hear you, Dr.
To be
Harry.
delivered?
Are we not in the reactions to Professor Okunoye's?
Sorry,
no, he went off. Okay, his Prof is back. All right, thank you, sir. So kindly share your slide, sir.
Okay, just a moment. I didn't know it was not shared.
No problem, sir.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes, we can, sir.
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. I don't know where I went off the other time. Where you stopped hearing me? I was on securing academic funding.
Go ahead, sir.
You went as far as
I would suggest that maybe you just continue from there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now I want to now move on to types of academic funding. Now I want to identify just 5. The first are what I would call travel grants. Now, because very many times, a lot of people think of big grants, and then when they feel they cannot satisfy the requirements for these grants, they just give up. Now, I told some people recently that there are grants that are actually meant for people that have never had the opportunity of traveling outside their country. Now, if you feel that what will earn you a grant or fellowship is your profile, the fact that you have won a lot, there are actually people who are looking for people who have never had any opportunity. And women are always privileged. Then there are also, now, let me say that travel grants, most of the time, are meant to support research-oriented trips and attendance at conferences. And I'll talk a little about that. And I think I want to encourage everybody to look in this direction. I recall that the very first grant I got, was what gave me the opportunity to travel to Europe for the first time. And I had a fully funded, my attendance at the conference, which held in 2 countries, was fully funded. And then pre-doctoral fellowships. These are, in many cases, partly or fully funded they either fund your work as a doctoral student, partly or fully. And again, you must show that you are a promising researcher, even at that level. Then there are also postdoctoral fellowships. Now, postdoctoral fellowships are meant for early career researchers. Now, globally, those who are eligible to apply for postdoctoral fellowships are people whose PhDs are not older than 5 years. But I must say that in the African context, because people don't end the PhD early enough in many cases, some funding agencies have had to consider the possibility of extending the number of years that people need, within which people can apply for this. For instance, the African Humanities Program allows people whose PhDs are not older than 5 years to still apply. And that's also the case with the new postdoctoral fellowships of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, which is meant for those who are affiliated to public universities in Nigeria. And then there are fellowships for advanced researchers. Now, these are fellowships that are meant for people who already have their own research profiles. And then these are people who already are recognized as experts in their fields. And then, of course, these fellowships offer more resources and support for collaborative projects. Then finally, there are research awards. Now, these are grants or awards that are, in many cases, not awarded to people because they applied, but because other people recommended them. Now, and they are, in many cases, major awards. Now, I will want to bring, and I'll do this much later, I'll bring even the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, NRF, under this, because the research awards are generally major grants. Now, let's start with travel grants. Now, I think that every early career researcher should take advantage of the opportunities that these grants offer. Travel grants are to support people either to do research, as we said earlier on, or to do research at the graduate level, even the MA level or PhD level, to go and do research in another university, to go and use library resources and so on, and then interact with researchers elsewhere, or to attend conferences. Now, the major consideration is always need. If you don't have access to other facilities, you are likely to be considered. And I want to say that a lot of African, based researchers, researchers that are based in Africa, take advantage of this, whether to attend the AGES conference or the conference of the African Studies Association of the United Kingdom and others, because they always have some grants to support that category of people. Then you have the West African Research Association travel grants. Now, WARA is based in Dakar, Senegal, and is funded by an organization in the US. And they advertise, I think, twice a year. They have travel grants for people to apply for grants to attend conferences. They also have opportunities to support people to come and conduct research there. And then there are also we can also talk about Commonwealth Conference grants. Now, I've deliberately provided the links to each one of these opportunities. And then the last one I'll talk about is the Agnes Mobility Fellowship. Now, this is a fellowship that is funded by the Humboldt Foundation in Germany, and it is administered by Humboldt Fellows. What this is meant for is to enable researchers to visit other institutions, either to do research or to participate in teaching. Now, you see, movement for researchers is not an alternative. It is a necessity. It's not a luxury. And I want to say that I'm always excited when I think about a policy in Zimbabwe where scholars are granted support to visit other institutions. In addition to the conventional sabbatical leave, Zimbabwean scholars are granted what is called they call it academic visit. They give them funding for academic visit, and it's to enable them to visit another university so that they can interact with scholars. Now, in many parts of the world where you don't have opportunities like that, you have some measure of parochialism, and in very many cases, the people in the university can almost adopt the language that is spoken in within that community as the medium of instruction. I think a university should have the universe. By that, I mean that there should be people from other parts of the world in our institutions, and it's only when we move about that this will happen. Now, there are also pre-doctoral fellowships. Now, the Tertiary Education Trust Fund has something in this for scholars within this particular bracket. And I want to say that it's a very generous support that is to enable them to do research. Now, what is unique about this, the funding that TED Fund grants, and I must say that it's only for those who are in public universities in Nigeria. That means that if you are affiliated to a private university or you are not attached to a public university, you're on your own, you are not likely to get this. Different universities actually have their own policies on how they administer this. And then there is also the Codestria small grant for thesis writing. Now, a lot of people got this in the past, and I think that they still advertise it from time to time. Then there's also the Next Generation Social Sciences in Africa Award, which is administered by the Social Science Research Council in the US. Now, a lot of colleagues have benefited from this, and people get as much as $15,000 to do their research. They always advertise their areas of interest at any time. And the last one I'll talk about is the Commonwealth PhD scholarships. Now, the scholars who are from Commonwealth countries are eligible to apply for this. Now, the next category of fellowships I would briefly talk about are those I called postdoctoral fellowships. Now, as the name suggests, these are only for those who have earned a PhD. And in most cases, it must be within the 5 years of being awarded the PhD. This is the case with the TED Fund postdoctoral fellowship, which is a new one. And then there is also the TED Fund institution-based research. It's for those who have also been awarded the PhD. Now, there's the Newton International Fellowship, which is administered by the British Council, and I think the Royal Society for Engineering or something like that in the UK. It's a very, very prestigious fellowship. The value of that particular fellowship is about £48,000, and then you are giving some money that is meant to facilitate your mobility, that is your movement to the UK and back. And in addition, you get £8,000 to attend conferences and then to acquire equipment. I mean, I'm delighted to say that a few friends that I know have enjoyed this particular fellowship. And one thing about the fellowship that is very important is that it also gives you an opportunity to maintain a link with the institution that the institution in the UK where you utilize this fellowship, even after many years of completing it. It's just like the Humboldt Fellowship. And then there's the Agnes Fellowship. This is the African German Network in Excellence in Science Fellowship. Now, don't let the name of the fellowship create the impression that it's for those in the sciences alone. What is very interesting about this fellowship is it's meant for fresh PhDs interested in applying for the Humboldt postdoctoral fellowship, and the value is €1,000. I recall that about 2 years ago, I had the privilege to nominate or recommend somebody for this particular fellowship. It's only Humboldt fellows that can do that. And so what you do is, if you're interested in this, is to approach a Humboldt fellow. If you are eligible, provide your details, including your publications and then the person would then submit your application on your behalf. And then there are also DRD postdoctoral fellowships. Now, the DRD postdoctoral fellowships are administered by the German Organization for International Scholarly Exchange. And then the Humboldt fellowships. Now, the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation administers a lot of fellowships and grants. Now, they have those that are called Alexander von Humboldt postdoctoral fellowships, and those that are also referred to as George Foster postdoctoral fellowship. The difference between the two is that the Humboldt fellowship is meant for researchers from every part of the world. The George Foster postdoctoral fellowship is meant for researchers from developing countries. The first one is supported by the German Ministry of Education, while the other one is funded by the German Ministry of International Relations. Now, there's also the Codestra postdoctoral fellowship, and then I think there is also the Codestra grant for advanced research in the humanities. So I should not forget to add the African Humanities Programs Fellowship. That's the AHP, Postdoctoral Fellowship. This is a program that is supported by the American Council of Learned Societies, and it is to help researchers in the humanities in 5 African countries, Nigeria, Ghana, Uganda, Tanzania, and South Africa, to concentrate on their research for a period of 1 year so they can do quality work, recognizing the fact that a lot of researchers in Africa do not have the time to concentrate on their research and do also not get enough funding to support their work. Now, I talk about the next category of fellowships, and I have identified this as advanced research fellowships. Now, these are research fellowships that are not necessarily for people who are postdoctoral researchers, in the sense that you must have spent more than 5 years before you'll be eligible for this. And this also applies to the NRF, National Research Fund of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund. Now, for the postdoctoral, advanced research fellowships of AHP, which are the Alexander von Humboldt Research Fellowship for Advanced, Fellowship for Advanced Researchers, and the George Foster Research Fellowship for Experienced Researchers. What you need to do, what you need is a profile, something that shows that you have your own line of research. You don't really need to be guided by a host, even though you need a host. So, and then you must have spent more than 4 years. That's anything from 5 years, you are eligible for that. In the case of the NRF, by the TED Fund, it is not normally stated, but the expectation is that anybody that is going to be the principal investigator must be on what we call the professorial cadre, meaning that you must either be a reader or a professor, a full professor. Now, of course, as a principal investigator, you're also expected to have collaborators, because that is normally encouraged. Now, the value of these advanced research fellowships is generally more than the value of what we refer to as the postdoctoral fellowships. And then the duration of the Humboldt fellowships that are in this category is also different. Those who are postdoctoral fellows can spend as many as 2 years. Those who are advanced research fellows can spend, I think, about 15 or 16 months. I think either Professor Ope-Davies or Dr. Naduga can correct me. I may not be current. But for the NRF, you can get as much as 50 million. That's the value, that's the maximum that I can get for the NRF. Now I go on to talk about research awards. Now, research awards, as I said earlier on, are awards or fellowships that you, in many cases, don't have to apply for. And the Humboldt Foundation has a lot of this. Now, there's the Humboldt Research Award, and then there's the George Foster Research Award. The difference between the two is that while the Humboldt Research Award is for researchers from anywhere, the George Foster Research Award is for researchers from developing countries. Now, the other thing is that those who benefit from the George Foster Fellowship are also supported, because the assumption is that they are coming from developing countries where funding and support for research is often inadequate. And so when they are returning, they are given equipment grants, and they are also given another grant so that they can return to their institutions. And I think that's a very subtle way of telling them to go back home. And I must say that, you know, well, I was a Humboldt Research Fellow. When I benefited from that particular award, those who were on that fellowship were not given the opportunity to enjoy the equipment grants. I mean, you were not eligible for the equipment grant, but we made a case at a meeting, and I think they started with us. You come back with your equipment, and that supports your work. Now, the next thing I'll talk about is, I'll quickly talk about why some applications fail. Let us recognize the fact that even when all the applications submitted for a fellowship, grant, or award are good, there's always a limit to how much, I mean, the number, how many awards can be granted each year because of funding constraints. So I think that anybody who misses the opportunity of a fellowship should always bear that in mind. But then there are some other reasons. The first is that in many cases, there may be a mismatch between the proposal and the priority of the funders. Now, why I like agencies that don't set any research agenda for you is that, look, you are free and so you can apply. In the past, for NRF, you needed to, if you were in the humanities, you needed to focus either on national security or integration. But now our colleagues have made a case and they have broadened the focus of the awards. And so now everybody can apply for whatever they are interested in. Then the next thing is the poor quality of the proposal. And let me just stress this a bit. I always tell people that in any competition, everything matters. And that means that you take time to do the work. Yes. Now, I want to also say that some people wait until it's a few days to the deadline for the submission of an application before they start working on it. Whereas a lot of people will start drafting the application a year to when they are going to apply. And then that will give them an opportunity to interact with colleagues who will look at the applications, make comments, and so on, so that they can take, they can take all of these comments into consideration in reworking the applications, their drafts. I mean, after working with the AHP for about a decade, I can say that very many times, it's obvious there are people who submit applications without ever showing anybody. And when you are reading those applications as an assessor, it doesn't take you time. But then the good thing is that they give you an opportunity to make comments that will help the applicant to rework the application and make an application when there's another opportunity. So it's very, very important that we pay attention to this. And there are a few things to do here. We need to interact with people who have been winning fellowships, grants, and awards. We should look at their proposals and see exactly what we can learn from them. I think that is very, very important. Now, in our own part of the world, I think very many times we have a problem. If you are not current, if you are not familiar with the state of research in any area, your application is not likely to have that competitive edge, because in any competition, you are supposed to demonstrate that you are familiar with the existing body of knowledge, before you then can critique what has been done and then make a projection as to the possibilities that still exist for advancing knowledge. So it's very important that anybody that's going to make an application in any area should acquaint him or herself with relevant literature and all that, and then be familiar with current debates and arguments. Then the other thing is budgetary constraints on funders. I think I talked about that. But then let me also say that it has also been found that in this part of the world, people submit very dubious claims, especially when you have to prepare a budget. For instance, the NRF is interested in those who want to make applications that would just be for 50 million. I know. I mean, when you apply for NRF, even when your application is granted, I'm part of a team that won an NRF grant last year. I mean, what we submitted was not what we were given. I mean, even though, we were very sincere in our projections as to what we would need and all that. Then the other point is incomplete documentation, incomplete or inadequate documentation. Then in some cases, if you are going to apply for major awards, if there is evidence that you have not had adequate exposure and then you may not have the capacity to carry out the research you have proposed, well, you may not be considered. Somebody else with a more impressive profile is likely to be considered. So let me just conclude by saying a few things. And I think I hinted at this earlier on. And that is the fact that those who have won small grants and awards always stand a better chance of winning more prestigious ones. So I think I always encourage people to start with travel grants. At least when you get a grant, you always be motivated to apply for more. And then academic awards, grants, and fellowships are proofs of academic influence, recognition, and mobility. And this is very, very important. Now, a lot of people in Nigeria spend their money to buy their computers, buy their printers, buy everything. You can get a grant. If you're in the public university, for instance, the IBR, for the institution-based research from TED Fund, I mean, you get, the maximum you get is about 2 million. And from that research, you can get a computer. You can get a few other items that will support your research in addition to paying your informants and research assistants, and then, funding other aspects of the project. So that now we don't need to just watch people talk about the awards and grants they have got when there are actually opportunities that we are not utilizing. And then the last point I want to make is that only those who apply for fellowship grants and awards can win them. You may be the most brilliant person. You may be the most hardworking person. You may be the most enterprising researcher. If you don't apply for any grant, nobody will come looking for you to award you the grant or fellowship. So I want to thank you for your audience. And I want to say that I'll make the slide available to the organizers so that they can share with participants. I have, in addition to the slides that have the main presentation, links to the websites of a lot of funding agencies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Okunoye. We are very grateful for your presentation. I'm sure that many of us benefited from the depth of knowledge that you brought to what you have just told us. Now then, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for reactions. Because we are pressed for time, ladies and gentlemen, we're actually running late. We will take only 3 questions or responses. They must be brief, they must be direct, straight to the point. Thank you. First response. Any responses?
Prof, thank you very much, Professor Okunoye, for the interesting discussion, sir. I just want to draw your attention to a question earlier in the chat. There was someone who was interested in pre-doctoral fellowships, and the person requested some clarity on some of the opportunities that they can explore. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I have not seen that. Well, opportunities, there are all kinds of opportunities. As I said earlier on, if anybody is, if you're affiliated to a public university in Nigeria, I think because the focus here is on those who are in Nigeria. I've just mentioned a few of them. You can apply to TED Fund, and I think TED Fund, I must say that if it's administered in a very professional manner in your institution, you should get a response from TED Fund. If your institution has an agreement to assist people who are applying, when you submit your application, you can also have people that would correct or make suggestions as to how you can improve on your proposal before they now forward it to Abuja. And I think that everybody should, at least if you're in a public university, you should be able to take advantage of that. And there are so many other fellowships. I didn't talk about South Africa, but I must say that almost every major university in South Africa has fellowships that are also for people who are not based in South African universities. I mean, Stellenbosch is one, University of Johannesburg is one, Wits is one, and so on. And so people go to these places. There are opportunities for postdoctoral fellowships in South African universities. Yeah, there's a question here. Can graduate students also apply for these grants, especially TED Fund grants? Unfortunately, no. Now, if you are a graduate student and you are affiliated to a university, yes, you can do your training in Nigeria. And I must add that when it comes to training abroad, TED Fund is particular about the institution in which you can train. You can only attend the topmost, I mean, there's a way of ranking universities. They must fall within there's a way they rank them, the best 10 in the world. If you are going to North America or Europe, if you are coming to Africa, they also have universities that you can attend. There's, I think, Victor Priest has raised his hand. Can you unmute and just, okay, you can ask your question.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I am at West Africa Theological Seminary, so I wanted to find out, though I studied in a university outside the country. So I wanted to find out, is there hope for private university to have scholarship and fellowship and all the scholarship you just mentioned now?
Well, thank you for raising this question. As I said earlier on, I have been involved in managing one of these, in my own institution, that's the TED Fund grant for staff training and development. And I need to say that I think that TED Fund needs to recognize the need to accommodate researchers that are not affiliated with public institutions. For now, if they are not funding projects, I think they should fund research. I mean, that's the position of a lot of us, and I think we have made it known to them, because the good thing is that TED Fund interacts with the Academic Staff Union of Universities, because TED Fund is actually the brainchild of that union, and they interact with them on a regular basis, also interact with institutions. And I want to say that I think that researchers in every country must be supported by funding agencies that are also funded by the government. So that's, I agree with you. But for now, they don't have that kind of facility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other question? Okay, Emmanuel Adeniyi.
Yeah, hello, Prof. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, thank you for putting us through and giving us this valuable information. I'm asking this question on behalf of a friend who is here with me. Now, if you are to advise anyone in literature to apply for these grants and fellowship, what specific areas in literature would you advise that person to focus on? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, let me say that I will not advise anybody to focus on a particular area because I think that itself is a violation of what we call academic freedom. I don't take academic freedom as just being concerned with allowing people to express their views and things like that. It's also the liberty that we must be given to explore what we're interested in. Having said that, I want to say that in many cases, if you are awarded a fellowship, the focus or the priority of those who are funding it, who are going to fund it, will be defined. In many cases, also, I know that you cannot. I mean, you are given the liberty, and you work with a particular host. Now, you are always expected to interact with your prospective host, and then in most cases it's expected that there must be some harmony between your own research interests and the focus of your host. And so in the course of interacting with your host, there will be some agreement, and the host is also likely to advise you to work in a particular area that is likely to attract funding. So I think that we should just take all of this. I mean, if I should tell you my own experience, I was going to work on something when I was applying. I wanted to go apply for the Humboldt Fellowship, which is one of the fellowships that I've enjoyed. And I would recommend that to anybody, because if you win the Humboldt Fellowship, for the rest of your career, you will have the opportunity of going to do research in Germany once in 3 years. And in addition to getting support for researches, organizing conferences, and so on. Now, I wanted to do something, and I spoke with some very prominent scholars of African literature in Germany, and they were telling me something else. So I met a senior colleague, the late Professor Tejumola Olaniyan, and another senior colleague, Professor Kunle George, at a conference in Accra, and we're discussing. And they now made a remark to the effect that, look, there's a way scholars in some parts of the world set the research agenda for us, that I should just do what I was interested in. And that was exactly what I did. I made the application, and in actual fact, 2 people expressed interest in supporting my work, and I eventually got it. But you see, let me say that I always advise people who are working in this environment, if you think you have developed what you can call a research profile in a particular area, and you have developed some confidence, and you have made some impact, it may be advisable for you to build on what you have been doing. But then if you want to be adventurous enough to break new grounds and then to explore, then you may take some time to read. Now, because I think the problem, you see, the problem we have in this part of the world is that the resources are not there. The libraries don't have the journals we're supposed to publish in, and we're supposed to publish in those journals that you have never seen. In very many cases, we don't even have journals that are published in Nigeria. So now that, you see, for me, when I look at Nigerian researchers that are based in Nigeria, I don't have a problem with them. I don't run them down. I don't say, look, they are not doing serious work. In actual fact, to be in Nigeria and to be doing any form of research itself, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. Because I know how much a lot of people invest in their own research. I mean, things seem to have changed. I don't know how things are now. When I was a graduate student of the University of Ibadan, there were current journals. But now we have a situation in which a lot of universities don't have current journals. They don't have books. I'm not talking about books on Caribbean literature or English literature. I'm talking about books published by Nigerian scholars that are based elsewhere. So I think the point is for us to assure ourselves that we're familiar with the current debates and arguments. And then, of course, in the course of interacting with scholars in our fields, we can always also get their opinion as to whether what we want to explore is viable, and so on and so forth. But you see, let me also say that in many cases, what a particular body will not fund will be funded by another. So we should never be discouraged when we get a no. To get a no is not an indication that you're not good enough. Everybody who has published in reputable journals, everybody who has won a lot of prestigious fellowships and awards has also got a lot of letters of rejection. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Okunoye. We are grateful for the depth of your responses, which are almost as comprehensive as your initial presentation. We shall now go to the introduction of the third presenter, as well as the presentation of his brief biography. This will be Dr. James Yeku, I hope I got that right. And the person doing the presenting is the redoubtable Mr. S.L. Larayeton. S.L., go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello.
Thank you. I have the privilege of presenting the bio of Dr. James Yeku. James Yeku received a PhD in English from the University of Saskatchewan in 2018 and joined the University of Kansas a year later as an assistant professor of African Digital Humanities in the Department of African and African American Studies. He works closely with Kansas Institute for Digital Research in the Humanities, with his research focusing on the digital expressions of the literatures and cultures of Africa and the African diaspora. He has a monograph with the title Cultural Activism, Social Media, Popular Culture, and Performance in Nigeria. As a sign of Dr. Yeku's scholarly versatility, his poetry collection, Where the Baedeker Lives, is listed on the 45th Canadian Poetry Collections to watch for in fall 2021 by Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Dr. Yeku is widely published in highly reputable outlets with several articles on digital humanities. In his works, he emphasizes the African articulations of the digital cultural record, digital cultures, and African popular media. In addition to these area of acclaimed scholarly endeavor, Dr. James Yeku regularly listens on issues of public relevance on platforms like Al Jazeera, Premium Times, New Zimbabwe, British Paper, etc. He also has a forthcoming book on social media. Gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. James Yeku. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the introduction. And I just want to thank everyone for being part of this. I know we have had a very lengthy morning discussing and listening to Professor Tunde, Opeibi, and then Professor Okunoye, whom I'm so delighted to listen to and to share a panel with. I want to thank Dr. Onanuga for inviting me, and of course, thank the Department of English and Literary Studies for this excellent events for which we have gathered. I would like to share my screen, Oga Paul, if that's possible.
Please go ahead, sir.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
it should be, yes.
Okay. So because we have already been here for long, I'll just try to get straight to the presentation without keeping people for so long. And my presentation is something I actually, think Professor Opeibi has already in so many ways made references to. Although my approach is to situate the whole discussions on DH within the context of literary studies more specifically, rather than linguistic analysis, which is also very central to what DH scholars around the world do. As a matter of fact, it's central linguistic analysis, central to what DH scholars in many Africa-based contexts do. And that's why I think Professor Opeibi's initial presentation is really terrific and important. For my presentation, I'll focus on literary studies and try to touch a bit on, aspect of cultural studies, especially from the perspective of theme,
Because again, there are people here in the audience from what I saw in the chat who do not necessarily do linguistic analysis and may be interested in the relevance of digital technologies and digital media, hardware and software for their own work in historical analysis, or perhaps just thinking about cultural performances or cultural heritage. So if that's fine, I would like to get straight into this and ask the question, how exactly should a writer who wants to present, very contentious views on race and gender, do this without sounding moralistic or dogmatic? I would say if that writer were Chimamanda Adichie, one important way to do this would be to create a blog. To create a blog within the space of the novel form as a form of aesthetic strategy. And this is what we see precisely in Adichie's Americana, a work in which to circulate and offer a very important political perspective on the complex and vexing issue of race and gender in the US, she decides to create a blog through Efemelu. I think this is really important, just thinking about the importance of blogging as an aspect of DH. And I would love to very quickly offer this perspective by Fitzpatrick on the idea of blog as a literary form of the quotidian. Fitzpatrick claims, she argues, and this is a former president of the MLA, she argues that the literary quality of blogs arises from a complex negotiation among discrete and often random daily entries and the often invisible arc that they together sketch. Character may emerge from plots in most literary writing, but in the blog, plot must itself emerge from the quotidian, produced not by a singular overarching narrative or even by a multiplicity of such narratives, but instead by the creation of numerous fractal narratives structured by the form of the database. The point for me is to think with Fitzpatrick about the importance of blogging as a form of, as a form that accomplishes and generates simultaneously the quotidian, the everyday, the dailiness of life. And this is what Adichie does with Efemelu in Americana, using the blog as a literary form that records our everyday reality. I mentioned this work because this is important to one way of reading Americana using a DH approach. And since we're discussing literary digital humanities, I thought it was important to also recognize this particular digital project that uses DH tools to study Americana as a novel. So what does this scholar do? Lauren Scholar, she's based somewhere in Boston. What she does is to recognize Adichie's strategy of using digital affordances in a novel, and then create a digital space, dhamericana.com, in which she's able to show the different transmedial interactions in Adichie's work. So in Adichie's novel, for instance, you have the very important reliance in plot development between earlier African-American voices. So this scholar just basically shows this, and then shows Adichie's relationship with Beyonce, shows Adichie as a talker in the context of the TED Talk, The Danger of a Single Story. Also decides to incorporate the work, we must all be feminists. So bringing TED Talk, showing intertextual relationship between the novel itself and another a work from the African-American literary tradition, are elements that are brought together to show the interactivity that is at the heart of the relationship which Americana foregrounds, especially as a work that is built on the idea of the literary blog. I don't know if I can, just quickly stop sharing my slide to show you this particular DH project. I think it's really important to get a sense of to get a sense of what I'm talking about, just to show that sometimes it's possible to be able to do some of these things. You're reading the novel, but you're also, sorry, 1 minute. Share screen. Please, can you see my browser?
Yes, please, we can.
Okay, great.
We can
so
see
this
our
is
browser, sir.
Okay, so this is Twiscola's the work by Twiscola, which is digital identity, diaspora, and transmedia practice. Because our interpretive approach is rooted in the digital, it's important to see how she basically is using digital media technologies to read Adichie. And that's one of the things literary digital humanities accomplishes for us, going beyond the traditional mode of reading and interpretation to considering different aspects of the novel in a more nuanced and detailed manner. So if you come on this website, you have different aspects of Adichie's work in relation to Americana itself and other parts of her work as a celebrity author in the media. I wanted to show this project just to show how by exploring with it, you get a different sense of what it means perhaps to engage with the text in a way that is different from what we do regularly in close reading of texts. I'll get back to my slide to acknowledge that this kind of work, however, is something that is already solidified in African literary studies and its intersection with the digital. Most people know here the work of Shola Adenekun, which is an excellent study that foregrounds the place of the digital in relation to African literary studies. And before its publication of African Literature in the Digital Age, Adenekun, as far back as 2012, was already discussing what he called the interneting of African literature, which I think is really important, just thinking about how digital media reshapes the production, the circulation, and the interpretation of literary agency on the continent. I think one of the accomplishment of Adenekun's book is the analytical space it constructs for us to articulate the digital, the digital expressions of literary works in a way that invites us to rethink how a new regime of digital visibility can facilitate new understandings of, again, quotidian political and cultural processes. In inaugurating in his opening chapter on network thinking, Adenekun draws on his own previous experience and background in computer studies, and then connect all of this with the work of Manuel Castells, who writes a lot on network theory, and the work of Patrick Jagoda, all in a bid to signal how the different layers of relationship and literary networks can show very important links between print publication and, of course, digital platforms. And I mentioned Adenekun's work also to publicize an event that we have here at KU in the next couple of days, in which Adenekun speaks more about this work. But this work is foundational, I believe, to recent work in literary digital humanities in Africa, which basically seeks to understand the computational approaches that are out there in relation to the interpretation of literary works. But beyond interpretation, there are also issues, again, like I said earlier, of production, and there are issues of circulation. And hopefully we can get to that shortly. I also have written previously on how, writers of canonical authors can basically reformulate the authorial perspectives of these writers through what a lot of people call fan fiction. By looking at online fan fiction, like Files Fall Apart on the blog Brittle Paper, which is, again, an important literary platform based on the digital, if you like, an important digital lit magazine, you are able to find how the idea of literary fandom and friendship becomes important to understanding, again, the interpretations of texts. So I wrote about this in 2016, and then later I was interested in, there was a country and the digital publics of African literature, and just thinking about how writers, Nigerian writers on the internet employ their presence online to discuss and negotiate, again, the works of established writers. In the article on Ope-Davies, there was a contra. I was interested in the contentious argument around that book on Facebook and the importance and discursive significance of literary controversies and feuds as a generative site that, again, advances in the interpretation of works. So that's a project I've continued to reflect upon, but I think, again, it contributes to the recent conversations around literary digital humanities. And the last work I have highlighted is Deference to Paper, Textuality, Materiality, and Literary Digital Humanities. So what I've done here is, again, to present a kind of exploration of the field and then think about the importance of print. As digital scholars, we're often concerned about digital affordances, digital media and software, and their connections to cultural and literary forms. But my argument in this particular work is to think about one, what I've called the persistence of a print imaginary in digital discourses. Despite the fact that we celebrate and often romanticize digital technologies, perhaps it's important to think about how the print form is still very much foregrounded in our imagination. Why would somebody write, use Facebook, as Adeneko argues, use Facebook and other social media to test their poetry, publish their poetry, and then after 5 to 6 years, they go to their blog, they go to their Facebook walls to collect those poems, and then you want to publish them as a book, a print object. What impulse motivates that? Those are the kind of questions I'm interested in Deference to Paper. The idea that there's always a return of the repressed in the context of print. We'll always have a return to print metaphors, even in the articulation of digital forms or new digital genres. But of course, I'm also interested in the question of materiality. Can we may not be able to hold a Kindle edition of Chimamanda Adichie's, again, Zecora, the way we might hold a physical copy of Americana. But the fact that we do not have a tactile relationship, we cannot touch the ebook, does not mean the ebook does not have a materiality. So I'm interested in questions of materiality in relation to what it means for the book form, whether digital or print, to be a physical object that can be studied, especially in terms of a paratest and other bibliographic codes. So these are some of the questions I raised in the third work. The work on social media, cultural netizenship, is almost completely far away from the domain of the literary. This is more something in the domain of cultural and media studies, and a lot of performance analysis also. Thinking about our performative self-presentations on the internet and how all of this complicates the expression of agency and again, the disruption and refusal of hegemonic power. But more importantly, I think it also builds on Adenekan's work in terms of the need to take social media seriously as a site of cultural analysis. I mentioned this work just to say that, like Adenekan's work, the idea of the literary and the cultural and their intersection with the digital humanities in Africa has had a steady growth in the last couple of years. And that what the school has done with Adichie's work, as important and significant as it is something scholars like Adeneko started many years ago. But all of these help us see how new digital tools like social media platforms, like blogging, and of course, some of the software that Professor Opeibi showed earlier are generative for analysis for literary scholars. Now, my own background in this field began in 2013 at Ibadan, when I was thinking about the trickster figure in the context of social media. And I remember presenting a paper at a colloquium in honor of Professor Da Silva. And I was just basically thinking about the reformulation of oral poetic tradition in the context of new media. And then in 2014, I worked with Alison Murray on what she called the Grub Street Project. The Grub Street Project maps the social and cultural history of 18th century London. And working within this digital mapping project enabled me to pick up important programming tools, learned a bit of digital mapping, and it was a project that got me thinking about how we could, for instance, be interested, say, in the mapping of Lagos. What would it mean to map Lagos digitally? And perhaps I could show something to reflect that very, very quickly. And if I have, okay. So this is a project that calls itself the New Maps of Lagos by a scholar in California, Ademide Adelusi. What is really nice about this project is how it offers you a GIS reconfiguration of different areas in Lagos. And I show this just to be able to say that with various, computational approaches, whether you are producing a GIS, map, or you're just using a tool like Voyant to study a data set or a particular corpus, you have new digital means of re-engaging with the kind of things we have always done traditionally. I like I think Fashino in Ibadan, Professor Fashino has this important work that reads proverbs in Things Fall Apart by Achebe. A very important stylometric analysis. And this was far before stylometrics became an issue of concern for DH scholars. I'm talking about probably early 2000s. Like Professor Opeibi said, it's easier to move from an analog-based stylometric approach to Achebe to a digital approach that allows us to do something more computational. So you have tools and software that actually would do all the kind of analysis Fashino did many years ago. My point precisely is the new generative potentials of digital tools for the traditional things we have always done. And it's important to know, and I keep talking about people who have done these things in the Nigerian context, because many other in the Nigerian context are doing the same thing and extending a number of these things. So when people talk about digital humanities in North America, I always like to remind them that in Nigeria, most of the things you guys are celebrating in the West here were being done many years ago. As far back as the 1990s, Tunde Adegbola was talking about machine learning in the context of African languages and technology. And the fact that we have a place called a computer village suggests that people were taking, the computer as an infrastructural object very seriously many years ago. So there are possibilities all over. And this map that represents, that digitally recreates Lagos, again, is important in the context of Lagos studies and what we do generally as urban scholars, post-colonial scholars of the city and of, cultural and urban topographies. Again, I show this to emphasize how, these computational tools, approaches, software and platform can invigorate what is already being done in various places. So in the context of the literary, this particular project on the Grub Street project maps London and basically seeks to show trade routes and the printing cultures of London in the 18th century. And the approach to that is basically recreating London before the Great Fire through these digital mapping projects. Now, all of this I think is important, especially because they show us the way the digital reshapes the representation, the sharing and the discussion of knowledge. This for me is important. A lot of us here, and I see many of my friends in the audience, we see Atokwesen the current African Studies Association president posts numerous YouTube links on Facebook talking about its discussions of several literary texts from different literary traditions from Africa to Europe and elsewhere. And I think about that in terms of how YouTube in that context is being mobilized by Kwesi to represent to us knowledge about literature, literary knowledges, if you like. And for me, that's important in the context of everything I've discussed so far. The goal of the DH scholar is to examine, in the context of literature in this case, to be specific, the goal of the DH scholar is to examine how the digital reshapes, and this is one of the major goals, even if not the only, is to examine how new knowledge ecologies afforded by digital platforms help us to share and discuss epistemic forms in a new and novel way. And that's really important. The Kwesi example, again, buttresses how in the African context that is being done. And the anxiety about the relationship between close reading and distant reading is something I might wrap up with. But it's important to mention the importance of this at this point. Alan Liu is one major DH scholar who works in the English context as well, and emphasizes the need to be able to not just focus on technical skills, not just focus on metadata development, focus on tagging and development of software and tools. He counsels us to think about the importance between being able to navigate text analysis and cultural analysis. And his work is one important and useful study I like to return to, just in thinking about the need for cultural criticism in the digital humanities. Sometimes we're too focused on the technical aspect of things and we lose sight of the place of cultural analysis. I think that is important because in the African context, there are so many things that we can work with. The June 12, 1993, elections and the uproar that resulted from that will be about 30 years, I think, in the next 2 years or so. And I imagine an archive of, say, newspapers that deal with or engage with that particular aspect of our history, digital archive online where people can relive, and recreate the memory of that particular event in our history. Or think about the contested memories of the Biafran Nigerian Biafra. Well, I was going to say Biafran genocide again, that is contested. But the point is, how do we, as literary scholars, as people who are interested in language, re-engage with Biafra? Of course, people write different articles. People like Chimamanda Adichie writes Half of a Yellow Sun and many other works or several other works that engage with, implicitly or explicitly engage with the war. People like Achebe would write, there was a country, and then, so I'm saying there are a lot of fictional representations of the war. But how about we also think of digital representations of the one, digital representations of the memory of the war. There are people who were alive during the war. A lot of people, probably a lot of them dead today, but a lot of people who were children then may still be alive today. Could we have an archive that assembles and collects a oral history of the war and those kind of things? So beyond the fictional, digital media could help us assemble narratives, first-hand accounts of those kind of events, whether it's the June 3 kerfuffle or the Biafran narratives. Digital media can make a very solid intervention in that. So that leads me to my own project on digital Nollywood, in which basically, so this is a bit of a shift away from literary analysis to cultural studies, if like, or film analysis. And what I do with digital Nollywood is to think about how, again, to return to the question of materiality, an important aspect of the material production of Nollywood can aid in the reconstruction of film
just thinking about Nollywood studies. So a lot has been written on Nollywood, and you can easily think of the works of Jonathan Ennis or Okome and many others. But how about we think about doing Nollywood studies differently? Again, like Atokwesen is doing with his YouTube videos, using social media to represent the traditional things we do through journal articles and book chapters and monographs. We can use these digital media platforms to, represent and reconstruct the past, re-engage with current narratives. And that's what I try to do with the history of Nollywood, at least using an important aspect of its material production, film posters. Now, these are para-tests of Nollywood, I understand. And again, they are not focused on actual readings of films themselves. A lot of people do film analysis, and that's fine. Textual analysis of particular films. I do that when I think it's important. On the other hand, I thought just looking at posters from, again, I'll quickly go to the website if that's fine. Looking at posters from, say, the 80s, the 90s, we could think of what it means to engage with the memory of Nollywood as a tradition of the video film culture that started in the 90s, supposedly. In this collection, my interest is to bring together different posters that even predate Nollywood itself. And I call attention to this particular project because for me, it's one of the ways I think it is worthwhile to think about how digital media can reinvigorate research in literary and cultural studies. So one recent aspect of the project is to think about, an oral interview with Yoruba Nollywood veterans. I think Akadeshokon argues about, and rightly so, about the demarcation of Nollywood and Yoruba Nollywood. So in recent times, I've begun some kind of oral history, collection that brings together popular actors and actresses from the Yoruba Nollywood side of things. Again, this is to document their understanding and the experience of Nollywood. And this particular project is an offshoot of the Digital Nollywood project itself. But what I really want to emphasize here is this Abiku story here. So thinking about the engagement with Abiku, Shoyinka comes to mind, JP Clark comes to mind, and perhaps even Achebe, especially in Things Fall Apart. I thought about all of those, but also, would point people in the direction of, say, a born digital object such as Duro. Now, this is an Abiku project that is based on comics. Somebody said to me, James, I want to celebrate the late Professor Pius Adesomi, and I've produced this Abiku comic. Do you want to publish it? And I was like, why not? Let's do it. So this narrative, for instance, will be considered a born digital object. A born digital object does not exist outside the computational domain. It can transmit from that computational environment to, say, a print form, but it mainly exists within that computational space, and that's why it will be called a born digital domain. So in my, say, Intro to African Studies class here, I'm interested in getting students to read to read JP Class Abiku, compare it to Shoyinka's Abiku, read for tone, read for language, read for the metaphors available. And then I asked them to think about a born digital object such as this, Duro, and just to get them to reflect on what it means to be an Abiku, what it means to, and then of course get them to read Pius Adesomi's chapter in You're Not a Country, Africa, which discusses the Abiku child also. What I'm doing is to go from the print to the digital, because I believe both of these very nicely complement one another. And because we're dealing with millennials, a lot of young people, at least in the context of students I'm most familiar with, I find that students are able to relate with visual forms as a way of supplementing what they learn in the context of the literary forms we look at in class. I would like to go back to the slide if that's fine. In addition to digital Nollywood, another project I've been thinking about in recent times, and this helps me return to literary studies and literary DH, is the project on digitizing Onitsha market literature. And for those who are familiar with this aspect of African Nigerian popular culture, you know, of course, there are lots and lots of archives. Well, even if not lots, there are quite a number of archives scattered across the US and the UK that present copies of these popular materials in digital formats. So if you go to Florida, if you go to Alberta, I think in Oxford and Indiana. Here at KU, where I'm based, I find that KU has over 100 copies of the Onitsha Market literary pamphlet, and I was interested in what we could do with them. And that's the focus of this aspect of my talk. But before I even mention this, I know that from my discussions with colleagues back at home, that different, especially at Ibadan and then Onsuka, to be specific, I know that there are special collections of this pamphlet in the country also. And I would love to see, say, a DH project in the Department of English at Ibadan, or even if dedicated to this kind of project, and to be able to understand the stakes of that kind of project will be something, you know, that will be very fascinating. Why is that even important, and what can we do with that? Anyway, so I've mentioned the Onitsha market literature because I thought it was important to think of new approaches, say from minimalist computing. Minimalist computing takes note of the limitations of technological infrastructure in certain social contexts, and then uses those principles in the design and utilization of hardware and software. So in a context in which we may not have all the technological apparatus to do what we need to do, how can we use the minimal platforms we have to be able to do DH work? So for the case of the pandemic, to give one example, a lot of people in the global north, and quite a few institutions, even in Africa and other parts of the global south, went fully online. Had, you know, learning platforms where students could gather. I think of Ashesi University in Ghana, for instance, but more in the West. A lot of people could go straight to Blackboard and Canvas and other learning platforms for their students. In the context of Nigeria, from some of the colleagues I spoke with, a lot of people, and this is not even a Nigerian thing, the same thing in Latin America, there are a lot of people using WhatsApp, and probably some of you here using WhatsApp and Telegram to teach students. Now that will be a good example of a minimalist approach to digital media, or to computing, or if you like, digital pedagogy. And I think it's really important. The use of WhatsApp, the use of Telegram, and those kind of smaller ecologies, the principle that informs that is replicated in the context of digital media studies. So think about the smaller tools we can use to digitize, say, an edition of an Onitsha market literary pamphlet produced in 1955, not available anywhere else, but available here. What can we do with it to preserve it for the future? It's probably a fragile condition. What basic computing tools can we employ in terms of its digitization? So those are the kind of questions I'm thinking about in relation to Onitsha Market Literature 2.0. So the platform I use is called Yeku. And what Yeku does is to allow the use of a static web page. Now, unlike that doesn't, as a matter of fact, require any database. Most of the projects you have online, including the ones I showed earlier, Digital Nollywood, which uses which uses Omeka. Omeka is an exhibition and collection based data management, based software. And the GIS project on digital mapping of Lagos also relies on database. But in the context of minimalist computing, I can do this project on Onitsha market literature without having to use any form of a database-based platform, or a platform based on that uses a database structure. So that means, for instance, that I can have all my work in a thumb drive and take it to. I can travel to Lagos and my work is with me, because it is that minimalist, if you like. It is based on just a static web page and does every other thing you would find in, say, a project that uses a database. So that for me is important, especially to get people who hear digital humanities and think about the technicalities and are discouraged by those. I try to say, these skills are things you can pick up along the way, pick up just by engaging with a platform and getting to do things yourself. I saw some questions about using some of the software Professor Opeibi showed for linguistic analysis, whether it's Voyant or the other ones he mentioned. And you'll be surprised that these are the things you can already do because you use WhatsApp and all of those things very easily. This software are really easy to learn, and having this approach of minimalism to compete to digital media ad also helps you and helps to be able to reinterpret the data sets we work with. Now, what's the implication of all of this? Reading Onitsha market literary pamphlets digitally, recreating them, reproducing them, because one of my goals for this project is to create a kind of critical edition for the pamphlets. I have a collection in which you can, for instance, I do not have this website open because it's not yet public, but one of the pamphlets I have already reproduced digitally is When Boys Don't Trust Their Girlfriends, which is one of the pamphlets from the 60s. If you click on this, for those who are interested in language, the first thing you notice is the difference in even the difference and the evolution of Nigerian English itself. The Nigerian English of the 60s is obviously different from what people speak now. And how did the barely literate authors, and this is from research, the local presses and the not literate in English, of course, authors who wrote this pamphlet, how did they seek to, and how did they encounter modernity, and how did they respond to it, colonial modernity to be specific? So if you open this particular pamphlet, you get a sense of what is being done, even at the level of language, how people were trying to make sense of the colonial structures around them. And again, I think this is really important from the perspective of literary studies, just thinking about how the ways in which we uncover layers and networks and language, and even the topic of gender. One of my arguments with this project is how gender is one of the most often overdetermined, as a matter of fact, aspect of Onitsha market literature, always interested in the question of authorship, the question of print. The question of authorship also relates to the question of gender. Several of the pamphlet writers were women, but they chose to have male pen names. Why did that happen? So there's been several works. Stephen, the newest work comes to mind in that regard, the place of gender in the Onitsha market literary pamphlet. And of course, print culture is dominant. You're thinking of the work of Karen Barber also, and I think Rebecca Jones in this regard. And the focus has always been print, gender, at least from my understanding of the pamphlet. And of course, I recognize Opeichina's foundational role in bringing all of these pamphlets together from a scholarly perspective. But what I think a digital edition of the Onitsha Market pamphlet may do is to get us to think beyond these normative and traditional topics, gender, print culture, and just to look at other possibilities. So if you go on this platform, you can have a new kind of engagement with a test that allows you to look out for other possibilities just by, engaging with the search function, just by being able to see, say, numerical frequency, for instance, getting some of the tests to Voyant or other places that allows you to show networks, and even in the context of mapping, show connections between different places. And I'll hand on the digital mapping of literary forms in relation to Shoyinka in a minute. But I think it's important to say that there's always, and for me, this is an important question I like to return to sometimes. There's always this anxiety about the displacement of close reading when computational tools and approaches become ingratiated with what we do as traditional literary scholars. And the work of Frank Moretti always comes up, especially what he calls distant reading. It proposed in Graph's Map Trees abstract models for literary history, and this is way back in 2017, that literary criticism needs to combine traditional methods of close readings with graphs, timelines, charts, calculations, and maps of literary works and networks. And this kind of work I refer to earlier in relation to Nelson Fashiona's work on a stylometric representation of proverbs and things fall apart. In this case, you're already thinking about, numerical representation of data sets, the kind of cultural data in Achebe's work. With distant reading at a computational level, it becomes more advanced. The goal of any text mining tools such as Voyant for distant reading would therefore not be to supplant the necessary close reading, and this is my own argument, would not be to supplant the close attention to the textual objects. So we still get to sit down with Achebe and do what we do traditionally in terms of close reading, because the tool does not even cannot analyze what you would call the sentiment of characters, for instance. So it means that even these tools have their own limitations. There are certain things an app will not do, and that certain technologies cannot do. The limitations of technology, the political dimensions of technology are something, are different topics we can engage with at some other point. But the point of visualization using a tool like Voyant is really important. The importance of, say, using a story map to be able to just think about the connections in different texts is really important. So say you encounter Wole Soyinka's Ake, and you're interested in mapping all the various places Soyinka mentions in this text. So I didn't grow up in Itoko, but I'm from Itoko, and I'm interested in the networks of geographical spaces in this particular work, in this topographical test. A GIS mapping tool would be really important. So not having technical skills in GIS does not have to limit me. There are different map-based platforms like Storymager, Graphs Commons, that help you to just create an account, like you create a Facebook account, and then you can play with things and show these imbricated networks. And again, that can be useful to generate new epistemic forms in relation to what, in addition, I should say, to what other scholars have done in the past in just by engaging with Soyinka's work. So for me, the goal of literary DH is not a displacement of close reading. It's more like combining Moretti's distant reading, using maps, using different aspects of digital tools and affordances, using all of those in addition to what we do in traditional close reading. So to give this final example, again, these are copies of the Onitsha Markets, copies of Onitsha Market literary pamphlets that I had from the KU special collections. We got them out, we went to the library, got them out, and asked students sit down to think about, say, the cover design, to write out their thoughts on different aspects of the pamphlet themselves. And it was a good opportunity for close reading. And then we discussed the digital collection itself, and made significant progress, just thinking about the interplay between the digital and the print versions of the works. So for me, what does the digital afterlife of the Onitsha Market literature pamphlet look like? That's something I get to think about, and what kind of productive engagement can we bring to bear and just engaging with? And that's one major question I continue to reflect on. What does all of this mean? Why is all of this important? Why does African digital humanities matter? I think it matters, again, like I said earlier, because we have the opportunities for new interpretive ecologies, for new knowledge spaces that invigorate what we do as scholars in the humanities. The intersection of the computational and the digital, as well as the humanities disciplines we all love, is something that can yield new insights. In relation to literary works in particular, what Andrew Piper says in his 2015 article is really important. It begins the article by asking, what would it mean for a novel to turn us as we turn its pages? How are we not simply moved, but transformed, that is turned around through the novel's combination of gestural and affective structures? In other words, as we turn the pages of a print book, is it possible that at some point a book can also move us to do certain things? And by asking that question, he's actually not thinking about the printed book, he's thinking about the digital objects, especially the moment you're thinking of the application of computational tools to the production and interpretation of text. You're thinking about what can emerge when tests begin to move you in certain directions. How do tests solicit our affections and cut our emotions? What new reading practices emerge in dealing with tests? What's our relationship with? I mean, if you pick a copy of, say, an edition of Achebe's Things Fall Apart from Your Office.
Hello, Dr. Hello. Hello, sir.
You want me to stop?
Could you please round up in 1 minute?
Sure.
You have 5 today to 45. You are heading for the hour.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So if you wanted to do, I lose my train of thought. Anyway, the point
you
of
are talking
all of
about
this,
you are
thank you, sir. I was saying that if you have an old copy of Achebe's Things Fall Apart and it is heavily annotated, it's easy for you to have a certain sentimental analysis or a sentimental relationship, to the text because of the years you have spent interacting with it. It's possible that that particular text moves you in certain directions. Now we can think also of the kind of reading relationship we have with a digital text, not necessarily because of its historical significance or even the time you have had it over time, but just because of the nature of its production, the nature of its ontology, the way it exists as a material form. What does it get us to do? It's like thinking of what a mobile phone allows us to do that we may not even be conscious of. So to put all of this together by as a way of concluding, I would just say that literary digital humanities is a field that has so much to offer the field. And from the works of Adenekon to others using computational approaches to study literature, we have something that finally, I believe, offers us a more dynamic and invigorating relationship with the literary artifact and objects we engage with. So I'll just leave it at that and thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yeku, for your extremely comprehensive and very interesting presentation. We are truly grateful, sir. Now then, ladies and gentlemen, 2 very brief questions to be responded to by the presenter. Thank you. 2 questions. Yes. Please, if you have a question on mute, go ahead and ask it. Thank you. No questions? You have a question, ladies and gentlemen, please go ahead.
For 1 year, you give us 2 million for 2 million for 5 years.
Nobody's talking about millions there. As much as we would enjoy sharing that money, we do prefer that questions be asked. Thank you.
After the talk on grants and funding, we should expect that, right?
Indeed. No questions?
Dr. Adi, my hand is up.
Okay, Dr. Fatsu, please talk.
Yes, it's not a question. I just want to appreciate that speaker. He has been very, very insightful in his presentation. And ordinarily, I don't know why there should be questions, because he just made statements of facts and figures that are quite beneficial. Just as somebody has sent a message, and you have promised earlier that you get in contact with the presenters and get us copies of the presentations, because it's not just possible to get all the details down as they were talking. So very much appreciated, and we're thanking him and the earlier presenter too very much for the incisive and insightful presentation. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question, please.
Question. Would you like to respond? Or okay, somebody has a question. Somebody has a question. Let that person deliver it, then you can respond to both, sir. Thank you. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I also have a question, sir. Sorry. So.
All right,
go ahead.
Dr. Yeku, can you hear me, please? Can you hear me, Dr. Yeku?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you for that wonderful. Thank you for that wonderful and brilliant presentation. My question has to do with. Could you please locate if there is a nexus between DH and memory studies? Because most of the things you've said today, I think they are quite. They are quite related. What is that nexus between the two fields? I met a Namibian friend in Berlin 2019 who was working on Facebook as literature. I was kind of confused. So, and what you said today, what is the nexus between memory studies? Can digital tools serve as replacements for mnemonic strategies? Okay, that we all talk about in memory studies. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Adeni.
Sorry, Dr. Yeku, before you respond to Dr. Adeni's question, my question is quite similar, so I don't know if you would just like to take both together. Okay, so my question, thanks first of all for your insightful presentation. I came across your article on fan fiction earlier, and I was very intrigued. So I've been thinking about this question as well. So when I saw your presentation, I was very, very interested in asking a question. My question is in terms of analyzing the literary materials that we find online, and how do we judge or ascertain their literary qualities, for instance, or do we say by the virtue of their publication online and because of their relevance to digital humanities, we forgo their literary qualities and then they're just available for analysis? Just I don't know if it's a relevant question, but I just wanted wanted to hear what you think about that, the relevance and literary qualities of materials published online, in that sometimes people just post their works on Facebook, on Twitter, when they've been rejected or by probably reputable literary journals and probably book publishers. So I would like to hear what you think. It's kind of similar to what Dr. Adeni is also asking. Thank you.
So thank you so much.
Dr. Yeku, 1 minute. Professor Okunoye has indicated that he would like to ask a question. So
okay,
let us allow him to ask it. Then you can respond to everything. Professor Okunoye wants to ask.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, this is a comment, and I'll take this as also an opportunity to really appreciate the opportunity to be on the same panel with my colleagues, Professor Ope-Davies and Professor Yeku. My own comment is this. I think there's an irony. I think it was Oluoguibe in an essay entitled "Connectivity and the Fate of the Unconnected," that talked about the predicament of those that are cut off from the rest of the world. I mean, talking about digitally. But the irony is that it appears in the developing world that people are doing very strange things with the facility that the digital revolution has introduced. I mean, I'm particularly interested in the way people in this part of the world use electronic resources, books, journals, and so on. These seem to be the main resources that people depend on, in spite of the fact that they are constrained. And the reason for that is that institutions lack the capacity and the will, but either the capacity or the will, or either, I don't know, to provide them. Now, we don't have a situation in which I think with time, people will have to focus on what people are doing with this here. I mean, it's here that they can access online archives that will give them access to books that ordinarily would have cost them hundreds of dollars. And I find it very, very interesting that, in spite of the fact that, the impression is created that this segment of the world is cut off, there are a lot of things that are being done that people may actually have not paid attention to. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. That's really useful, and I will have a comment to that if that's fine. But I don't know if we need to take all of the questions, so I can respond at once, Dr. Harry.
Please respond to all of them at once. Thank you.
Okay, there's a Roti. I don't know if Roti still wants to ask a question. I see a hand up.
Just go ahead with the questions that were asked. Do you remember the questions?
I do. I remember them.
Okay.
There are two hands up. I'm thinking we should just take both of them, so I answer everything at once and close.
As if you are the presenter and you have made that request, please, they should go ahead very quickly, please.
So DH and memory. Think about Boat 5 many years ago. Boat 5 is the media archive of a generation in Nigeria. Not a lot has been done in that regard, just in terms of how a media object and DH and memory may connect. And this is for Dr. Adeni. I know you remember the Boat 5, the BlackBerry era. This is an interesting aspect of the discussion. And it was what I meant earlier when I mentioned having, say, a digital collection that brings first-hand narratives of people who survived Biafra. That's a very neat connection between DH and memory studies. Whether it's memory at the level of media and digital technologies at the level of the technical, with the Boat 5 example, the phone itself as a material object, evoking the memory of the past, or the media, digital media at the level of content. So I'm just thinking in terms of, okay, the first-hand narratives, collecting all of those in an online archive, especially war narratives. So those memories of the war. So that would be a good intersection between DH and memory. Daniel White, I think your question is really important. And Shola Adenekon deals with this in his book. You should see it. The relationship between high culture and low culture in regard to the works you find on social media. So Shola Adenekon calls that space a testing bed, and I think that's true, right? But we need to think about the literary merit, who judges and evaluates the literary quality of those works. And but again, the question of judgment ties to questions of taste, and to be honest with you, we can spend another hour on that. But Shola Adenekon's work, I think, he addresses that. And thank you again, Prof. This is really important. The question about the implicatedness of Nigerian scholarship in shadow libraries, being able to access materials from shadow libraries is something a colleague of mine and I have been thinking about here. What does it mean to be connected even when you are not connected? And that again borrows from Ogube's essay. What I would say to that is that there's a certain essentialist attitude to Nigerian digital subject, as a matter of fact, African digital subjects, and a certain rhetoric of the so-called digital divide is being used to obscure the very important and productive things people are doing in digital domains across Africa. So your statement is really important. Your observation is really important, and I think it's something we can, think more about in the days and weeks ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yeku. We shall now go to item 6 on our program, which is a vote of thanks by the facilitator. That would be Dr. Paul. Dr. Onuga. It seems he is not around.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. So I really want to appreciate the guest presenters today, Professors Okunoye, Professor Ope-Davies, and Yeku, who have delivered intensely scholarly insights into grantsmanship, corpus linguistics, and literary digital humanities. I know that they have sacrificed their time and, of course, in Yeku's case, even sleep in order to be with us today. Their presentations have been quite enriching. We really appreciate your wealth of experience and mentoring which you've shared with us. I want to appreciate the Vice Chancellor of my institution, Professor Oyeniyi, for providing a platform on which the institution can really solve. The Dean of the Faculty is also recognized, Professor Abolanle Okola, who has been with us since we started this program today. Sir, thank you very much for the leadership and the support that you've always made available for us all. We can only fly higher. I want to also appreciate head of department, Dr. Faride, for steering the affairs of the department at the time and for his I must appreciate my colleagues in the department and faculty for sharing the idea. Program is successful. Thank you. You are wonderful. But at this point, I have to single out Dr. Harry for efforts all through the planning and coordination of this event. May God bless you. You have even also gone ahead to assist with the moderation today. I want to also thank Dr. James Akinola, who he sacrificed a lot and helped us with the hosting on Zoom. You have really contributed to the success that we achieved. A big delight for me is the diversity of the audience. I was amazed by how far wide the flyer was circulated. The significant feedback that we received, and how so much interested academics and postgraduate students. I really want you all to know that without you, this program would not have achieved its purpose. You have motivated us to think ahead and to see how much more we can contribute to scholarship in Nigeria and beyond. So I want to say that you shouldn't be surprised if the name Department of English and Literary Studies, Federal University of Maine, continues to be in your eyes more often. continues to be like Dr. Yeku has lead a challenge for us. You'll definitely be overtaking OAU and UI in DH studies in the coming years. Thank you all. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much, Dr. We shall now move to item 7, which lamentably has nothing to do with it. It is the closing remarks by our esteemed HOD, Dr. Haifu Olariwaju Farin.
Item 7.
It is the 7th item, but it is not full.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ari. Well, first and foremost, I would like to express my appreciation to the chief host, the Vice Chancellor of the Federal University of Oye, Professor Abayomi Fashina, for providing enabling environment and logistics support for this online academic webinar. We appreciate greatly the support from the Faculty of Arts, Professor B.T. Obola. His leadership style at the faculty has always been very progressive. I also appreciate the facilitator, Dr. Nanunga, for ensuring that there was no lapse before and during the webinar. I want to appreciate the speakers for their lucid presentations. Professor Tunde Ope-Davies' brilliant presentation on corpus building and analysis using corpus to
Dr. Faraday, please unmute. You may have muted by mistake.
Prof. Oyeniyi Okunoye's fellowship grants and other academic opportunity for the Nigerian academy, no doubt must have exposed us to trends in these areas of academic pursuits. And also Dr. James Yeku's insightful presentation on literary digital humanities in Africa will be etched in our memory, especially the digitalization of African cultures in such areas as Nollywood, Onitsha market literature, and so on. In my capacity as the host, I thought it would be appropriate and useful to summarize some of the ideas emanating from this webinar. Firstly, this webinar has been very effective in meeting its purpose, which is one, to expose participants to current trends in the art of fellowship. Two, to examine fellowships, grants, and other academic opportunities for the Nigerian academic. And three, to discuss literary digital humanities in Africa. Well, no doubt our minds have been assailed by a torrent of new ideas, information, latest styles, and new techniques on how to develop proposals and how to assess fellowships. There is indeed plenty to reflect upon by every participant from the presentation of our guest speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, I am enthralled by the large turnout of the participants for this webinar. It shows the importance of the themes of discussion. Finally, I want to thank my colleagues in the department for their support in ensuring success of this seminar, of this webinar. I thank you all. Dr. Ari?
Thank you very much, Judy. Thank you, sir. So, ladies and gentlemen, with the closing remarks of the HOD ELS, we have come to the end of this first webinar, Digital Humanities and Fellowship Grants.
And now item 7.
No, that was item 7. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We hope that very soon we shall have cause to call you again for yet another stimulating and enlightening webinar. Thank you very much. Safe journey, everyone who needs.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. See you around. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Have a
Thank you
great
to
day.
everyone.
Bye.
I'm sorry, my lecturer at the undergraduate level. Thank you so much. It's nice seeing you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you, Dr. Paulo Meduga. Thank you very much, Dr. Paulo Meduga.
Thank you,
Harry.
Dr. Paul, for the
Professor Harry.
God
Professor
bless.
Harry, are you sitting there? I know how to catch you now. I know how to catch you.
Dr. Paulo Meduga, thank you. God bless. From Cornelius Meduga.